Hello, everybody. Welcome. Aurora here, November 23rd, working on level 2, lesson 5. And this one is about the origins of solar consciousness. Cheeky is playing with her toy in the background. And so just want, yeah, you can see her slightly off screen. So you know that she's down here supervising everything that we're doing. Okay, everything that this is about today, this particular presentation, is about our profound connection to not only the sun, which is our nearest star, but the entire stellar network, which is a network of consciousness that represents the neurons of a much, much larger brain or a great thinker in the sky. Some key takeaways or points from today are going to be: the sun is not just a giant nuclear furnace spewing hot gases and radiation materials, including light and photons, outward towards us and other planetary structures. It's a thinker. The sun is aware, or I would prefer to personify it, even though not to gender it, but the sun, they, it is aware, sentient, but not an anthropomorphic face as you and I are, but a sense of personhood and sovereignty and willpower, and is divinely connected as a portal of consciousness. So, I don't always mean to sound so highly critical of Earth's science or objective materialism here in this time and place, because I feel like everybody should be given credit for doing the best that they can with their present level of perception and understanding. So I feel like science does the best they can with their measurement instruments, but they have huge blind spots. And because in the recorded lesson, of course, I'm a little bit more harumph about science, but now I just want to be really, really clear. Like I'm not trying to be judgmental or condescending to anyone or any thought structures, but science or objective materialism represents a very limited view of reality, and does not include the sense of the sun and stars in general as being points of consciousness and sentient emitters of intelligence and information. Science focuses more on the sense of like infrared light is coming on my face and I feel warmth, but does not necessarily recognize that light information is flowing to me and I am being informed in the experience. And also that there's a rapport, in the sense that, key takeaway number 2, everything that we have is borrowed sunlight. So your body is borrowed sunlight. And even though we have this very, very profound connection with our present star, that is the, let's say, loudest voice in the chorus of the great cosmic symphony, because it is the one that is nearest to us, Sol. We're in the solar system, so SOL is Sol. And that's our star, like our, loudest singer in the chorus. All of these different voices speak to us and give us information. It is part of a larger comprehensive network, and that it's so like calcium in your bones was not, or the basic atomic elements that comprise the molecular structure of your body right here now were not emitted from this star. They came from a previous star. So another key takeaway as we begin to look at stars as personified sentient beings and developing our rapport with that great thinker there, which I'm always going to say this to you guys, and please always remember it. Spoiler alert, it's you. Like that is you coming from a different direction in terms of your soul's journey and your soul's evolution. But you become a star, you become the stars, you become part of that great network of neurological interconnectivity that is the network of pure light. And so there ends up being no distance between yourself, and that's another one of the practices that I do in terms of teaching sun gazing. No distance between the sun that is internal inside of your mind and all of the light that circulates through your body, through your own miniature microcosmic neurological structure. There's really no distance and no distinction between yourself and the stars and the sea of light and information that they emit and that you swim amidst, or the ocean of waveforms that you are navigating, all of these amazingly complex waveform structures that flow around you and through you and throughout this planet, and that is really what creates and upholds reality. So getting away from the sense of you're on a three-dimensional rock that is hurtling through space, and really getting more into the perception and interpretation levels of everything around you is a waveform of potentiality, and you're buoyant within that sea of waveform potentials, which then, due to your observership and co-creative partnership, you are coalescing into a sphere of experienced matter around you, which might look like a three-dimensional room, like a box that we're in. When I say three dimensions, I mean a box moving through time. So you're in a box and you're moving through time. But everything that you have, like your calcium of your bones and elemental basic building blocks of molecules and molecular structure, that comes from the death of previous stars. So if I grab my sculpture over here, hold on a second. This sculpture I use all the time to talk about what is death, and our, of course, intention to go on the central core timeline and not hit the membrane of death, but to ascend. But stars have a lifespan and stars die. And then this has to do with black holes also. So today I'm going to talk about the very observable phenomenon of birth, lifespan, and then death or end of life of a star. But I want that to be kind of like a segue into this sense of moving on to the pathway of light and eternal existence. But the idea is, stars are alive, stars are sentient. They have a beginning, a middle, and an end. In this world or context or milieu that we find ourselves in, which is a time place where there are seasons, there is mortality, and there is an end to some things. But there, of course, is another truer layer of reality that we are entering into, where there is no death. So straddling two realities. So my languaging becomes difficult because I want to acknowledge where we're going to. Are we speaking into truth? Things that we truly want to be, wish to be, and intend to be aligning with the sense of eternal presence and eternal, when I say coherence and longevity, that's what I'm talking about. An impulse, your consciousness being an impulse that travels endlessly, as opposed to bifurcated lives, partitioned or compartmentalized between different levels of existence. Let me just drink a little bit. But it's really relevant to talk about birth, life, and death of stars as it relates to black holes, which I talk about in terms of being not just an exit point of reality, but a singularity and the balance to what is happening during the life of a star. So focusing on today on balance, and also the sense in balance that I should just jump in and talk about what is the lifespan and life cycle of a star. But what happens when a star dies, and the huge compressive forces in that collapse end up being the genesis of all of this new matter that is actually what's inside of you. So to finish up that very, very long parenthetical reference there, you are made of star stuff from stars that have already been in existence and then left their existence. So because that's where like your calcium comes from. And then borrowed sunlight is everything else that you have. When I say borrowed, or gifted, but it's not something that you own, it's something that's in a flow. So all of your energy and matter that you have right now for your body is also being given to you from your sun, the nearest emitter, and also all of your ideas and all of your energy to move through time is all coming from the sun, which is an indirect intermediary to the galaxy, which is this great brain that is actually a node on a network of consciousness that is incredibly, incredibly grand in both its physical size and also expanded nature through time. Blah, I know that's a lot. So big takeaways. Let me get started on my notes, because every time I always just get going, and then I don't spend enough time on my notes, and they're extensive and really good for this particular class. Okay. Everything we are doing right now is based on solar consciousness. It's based on light. And in this class and in moving forward, whenever you hear me talk about light, You can do a fun experiment where you just replace the word light for consciousness or intelligence or awareness. And that is literally what we have. So when you look up in the sky, if you look outside, if it's daytime where you are right now, and you see a big, giant, glowing ball of light, what you see is a big, giant, glowing ball of awareness that is emitting intelligence to you and information to you. The sun is a star. It's so, because I know that it's so big in the sky, it just is much more prevalent than the other stars. So we just need a reminder, it is a star, it's connected to all of these other stars, it's part of stellar or celestial consciousness. And so another big thing is the star is a portal or an emanator. Because again, the scientific model right now gives you this sense of a critical mass of both energy and atoms in terms of the sun star is generating or emitting photons just from the ka-chunka, the chemical reactions and oscillations that are happening at that molecular level. And that's accurate, but what's really happening is the sun is a portal for photons. Photons are packets of consciousness, and they are waveform potentials, and they're coming from someplace and moving to someplace. So another thing about light as a phenomenon, light as consciousness, light as intelligence, it is defined by its motion. Got it? Speed of light. It is coming from someplace and moving to someplace. So when we have a waveform that is moving and it's moving at a particular speed, and we say that's light and it's moving at the speed of light. But when that waveform slows down and coalesces, then we say, that is matter. That is a solid piece of matter. So light is, from our present embeddedness in reality, defined by its motion and its movement. And the sun and the stars, as emitters of light, are portals for light on its journey. That light is coming from someplace and moving to someplace in terms of multidimensional layers of reality. So now, like, we're thinking of layers of tapestry, or like you could think of it like layers of lasagna, different stacked up layers of reality, through which many different commonalities or threads are able to go through all these different stacked up layers of time and dimensionality, and that is also what photons and photonic consciousness is. So photons themselves are conscious and aware, so because they're light. And light is consciousness. So you look up in the sky and you see during the day, there's a big giant ball of glowing consciousness up there that is literally emitting and showering you with tiny little fractal aspects of consciousness. And then that consciousness enters into you either through sun gazing, or enters in through physical light, or I was just having my little coffee snack before we got started here, through physical food items, which is all solidified light. And then it continues on its journey. That light enters into you, consciousness information enters into you, but it doesn't just stop and get stuck. It flows through you in terms of your biological cellular metabolism, where food comes in here, and then my muscles go like this, and you emit infrared and kinetic energy. And also food comes in here and then becomes glucose. And I'm going to do a whole class, a new curriculum that is called the Path of Light. And I even get into molecular profound teachings about the structure and creation of glucose during the photosynthesis process, and how that relates to the bending and folding of the fabric of time, space, and consciousness. So just be aware that that's on the horizon. I'm about to get going on making that officially, formally available to people. But that's what I've been learning about when I do my sun gazing in the morning. And before I eat my physical breakfast, I eat my non-physical pure light breakfast. And that gives me ideas. And ideas literally put us into motion and give us a vector or a trajectory could be for your day or for your week or for your year. It can inspire you to do projects or perform activities and do stuff and create stuff and make things happen, because you, big takeaway, are not independent of or in a contextless void from the sun and the stars. You are highly connected to and interdependent with the sun and the stars, and that everything that's happening in terms of solar health or space weather or solar behavior because the sun emits all sorts of stuff. It does, again, it does all sorts of stuff. It has its own metabolism and unique experiences all the time that are affecting the individuated human, our ecosystem, life on our planet, and life on all of the planets of the solar system. And my brain is going really fast and not connecting to my mouth. All of the planets of the solar system, and also the sun is not just here like dum 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 do singing its own song. It's totally connected to all these other songs that are emitted from all of these other stars that are all connected to the galaxy. That is the supermassive black hole. That is like the central gravitational connector, or the tap, tap, tap conductor that is organizing all of these light emitters. And light is also possibilities and probabilities. Light is also everything about this physical diagram. So light and consciousness are your light body. Your light body is this multi-layered chakra body of different colors. The different colors represent the different layers of light separated out, or the constituent elements, ingredients that come from the sun, and they are your time body. The sun is intimately connected to time. So it's a portal through which light flows as light is on its soul journey and its evolutionary journey. And the sun is connected to time in the sense of literally being an artist of reality and thinking about possibilities that can happen. And as the sun thinks about possibilities that can happen, those possibilities are emanated as light forms that come into us, which we then perceive as the quote unquote raw materials for our daily experience or for our day, and what we are going to do with our time, and what is possible or capacitated with our consciousness. We take the raw materials, just like you take food as a raw material, put it into you, and then it is your particular artistic expression of how you're going to sing or move or dance through time in order to express the truthful nature that comes to you in those raw materials. So I'm going to draw with a lot of diagrams, don't worry, because I know I'm doing a lot of just like describing with words, but worth it for me to do the describing with words. So let's start with the life cycle of a star. What happens in deep interstellar space, which means like there's just a lot of the nothingness between stars. There are these giant dust clouds that contain tons and tons of particles, very, very tiny molecular structures and atomic structures and gases and the potentials for life. And this acts very much like cymatics. Okay, what is cymatics? So a lot of people already know what this is. When I recorded this 10 years ago, it wasn't quite as familiar. Let's say that this is like a vibrating plate, that you sprinkle it with baby powder or very fine sand or something like that. And if you put music connected to this plate, or if you use a violin bow, do something to vibrate the surface of this plate, the tiny little particles that are on the surface of it begin to organize themselves into different patterns. And this has to do with interference patterns. Let's draw interference patterns, everyone. Let's tell you what this is about, because that has to do with additive color mixing. So in interference patterns, let's say you have here's a sine wave. You have an up and a down. And then, of course, you have this place of neutrality over here. You make these complex patterns. Wait, let me just change this view over here. You make these complex patterns by the ways and the places in which there are these neutral nodes where you can't have particles, because like you can have a particle, let's just get a particle color. You can have a particle here and you can have a particle here, but you can't have a particle over here because that is like a place of stillness. And so these interference patterns happen when you're able to see that there are places, regular places throughout like a matrix or a pattern, where you can have particles, but then regular places where particles are not. And it ends up, so there's like, null spaces, neutral spaces, and then places where particles collect and coalesce. I don't have to draw a picture of cymatics for you because I'm wearing them and they're right behind me on the wall. This is everything that I paint in terms of time waves. So, and the complexity of the patterns changes as the waveforms change. So to use my hands, like here's an up and here's a down, many multiple overlapping waveforms. When you have an up, plus a down, you collapse to neutral, all right? When you have an up plus an up, this plus this, you get a way up. Got it? So this is beginning to really see in practical terms frequency and waveform, which is the basis that I started off with, I think, in lesson 1 or 2 of level 1, the sense of frequency and waveform and how that is being expressed in time waves and how that is also being expressed in the experience of consciousness beyond merely the world of matter and physical matter that we see. So stars are born because there are galactic superwaves. What is a galactic superwave? So now we're going to talk about consciousness as it is based upon the amount of perception and time, your lifespan, and how much you can perceive in terms of a slice of time in your lifespan. So if you are a fruit fly and you are able to live for 3 days, you have a tiny little slice of life compared to a human that can live to 100 years, right? So for a fruit fly, they're born, they live, they die. They live in your garbage can, and you open your morning a garbage can in the morning to put away the coffee grounds, right? And make some fresh coffee, and flies come on out. They're like, wow, we've never been out of the garbage can before. This is the dawn of a new day. They're like, da-da-da, flying to the outer space regions for them, like out of the garbage can is getting off of their planet. I'm being very silly and facetious, but you're just trying to personify what life is like for them, because they live their whole life overnight for you, sleeping in your cozy bed is generations and generations for them. And then when you open the garbage can in the morning, which is something you do every day, it's the first time for them. It's the first time for their generation. How do you have a conversation with a fruit fly? The scale of your lives makes that level of communication prohibitive. Now we get to you. You are a fruit fly, or even a faster organism in comparison to a star. A star can have a lifespan that can be millions or even billions of years. So if we look at the definition of one universe, like the cosmos is the entire structure of all fabric and all time dimensionality and layers of dimension everywhere and all possibilities and probabilities. But the universe is one version of this multi-layered, multifaceted, extremely complex system. So if we just focus on one universe, like the beginning, the genesis of everything that's happening, stuff happens, stuff happens, stuff happens, and then no more stuff happens, all right? One continuum like that. Within that one continuum, it might be 28 billion years long, right? There are some stars that have a lifespan that is so long that they were born at the beginning of this universe. They might be 13 billion years old. They're still alive. They have not yet died. And that they might even have a lifespan that is a galactic wave that is this big, all the way across your whole screen, from the dawn of experience to the entropic heat death of the universe. That is how long those stars last. Billions and billions of years, a time scale that is so grand, it is difficult for a tiny fruit fly-ish human to even conceive of what that level of life is like. You're moving at vastly different rates. Not all stars live that long or have that level of time scale. Some of them live 13 billion years, some of them live 1 billion years, some of them live just a couple of million years. And I'll tell you what determines this, but then you might be like, Aurora, like why? Like why do some stars live so long and some stars don't live so long? The answer is, or one facet of the answer, there are simple practical concerns that the death of stars creates very special molecular and atomic and probabilistic circumstances wherein complex matter structures are created known as atoms, and those atoms then become the basis of life. So if we lived in a world where all of the stars were born but had enormous timescales and never died, there would never be these crushing and then explosive expansions that make all this stuff, and they spew the aspect of creation all over. We wouldn't have calcium for our bones. We would not be able to be here in physical bio body suits having this experience in an ecosystem, because as I said, All of the stuff that you've got is borrowed or on loan energy and matter that comes from the stars. And you are the stars, like you're loaning it to yourself, and then you know it's going to come back to you. But it is all for the experience of being able, the miracle, the supernatural miracle, and the privilege of being able to be here in a physicality realm and to be embodied. So what makes some stars last 1,000,000 years? What makes some stars last 1,000,000,000 years? And it has to do with the dynamics and the balance of energy emitting outward versus, or balanced with, crushing energies pulling inward. So stars are so huge, huge, huge and enormous that they have a lot of their own self-gravity and their own ponderous nature of having so much stuff, so much mass, that they would tend to collapse in on themselves. But they also have this balance of expansion, which is this amazing profusion of energy that comes outward from them. And that is the solar wind. Well, for our star, it is named the solar wind. It is a balance of the energy emitted outward, energy emitted in the sense of high energy particles, high energy waves that would be like very, very, very tiny wavelengths and moving very, 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 very fast. So everything that's like faster and higher than our visible light spectrum, like X-rays and higher, stuff that's really, really, really fast. And that all of that force field of expansion outward is balancing out the gravitational crushing or like pulling inward. And that balance between those two forces sustains the life of a star. So how does the star begin? You have the potential for star stuff. There's dust and gases in a big giant cloud that is called a nebula. This is a planetary nebula, or the possibility and the I already said that word, the place where there's a potential for life to arise. And then special experiences must happen in order for life to actually arise, just like the conception of a human being. So in a human being, it's not just sperm meets egg. It's like these things have to happen in just the right way. The vectors have to be exactly right. And then what you actually end up having is this amazing kind of harmonic integration of forces, which then creates a beautiful, literally geometric, perfectly shaped, earth measuring waveform expansion into the sense of the energy field that contains and becomes a fertilized egg. Same thing with the star, where you have all of these not very well arranged bits of gases and dust and particles. And what happens is a galactic scale wave comes along. So a galactic scale wave, like if we are a tiny fruit fly, let me draw it for you, we might only see a little tiny slice of it. Let me clear this out, clear everything out, clear it all out. Let's draw a galactic scale wave. It's so big, it goes all the way across the entire screen like this. And then let's draw the time scale of a little tiny human. I can't even make my slice of time small enough. So just imagine that that's our lifespan, 100 years. It's such a small little slice of the overarching, quote unquote, movie or narrative structure of what these events are and where they're going and what's happening, that it is difficult to even perceive that it exists. That literally a galactic scale wave, like here's the giant supermassive black hole that's at the center of a galaxy, and then here's all the arms of our galaxy. Milky Way is shaped like a galaxy that has arms, or is like kind of a spiral starfish like that, but they're not all shaped the same way. But a big giant group of stars that is a symphony that is known as a galaxy. A galactic scale wave is one that is so large that it could travel across a whole galaxy. It could even encompass the entire galaxy itself. Like I'm trying to make one big giant overarching wave that goes across that whole entire galaxy. So let's clear it out again. So to make this easier for you to see, each one of these little tiny black dots is a galaxy, all right? And these galactic superwaves are giant thoughts that are from a magnificent thinker organism that I would say is probably close to the conception of what humans would describe as God, It is a non-anthropomorphic structure of consciousness and higher intelligence that creates these thought form waves that go all throughout. They're organizing principles that flow all throughout the fabric of time, space, and I always add in consciousness. And as they flow through, what they do is they organize things, just like cymatics. So here's in this little zone over here, highly exaggerated clumpings of dust and gas and the potential for what is a star. And as the giant galactic superwaves or thought structures flow through that potential for stars, what happens is the star stuff begins jiggling and it interacts with itself. I'm trying to draw pretty patterns. And then at a certain point, it swirls together and kapoof, magic happens, kapoof, like the moment of conception with a sperm meeting an egg. There's something supernatural or miraculous that happens. These formerly unrelated particles begin to coalesce together, and you have to have critical mass. Stars don't all have the same size. Some are rather small, some are very large and supermassive. And again, not necessarily the bigger ones last longer. And that goes down to the sense of a balance that, like, if you think of a waiter or a waitress carrying trays that have lots of dishes balanced on them, it's actually easier. Like if you're going to carry 10 dishes, that's easier than carrying 10,000 dishes. Now you see me like, I'm like balancing 10,000 dishes. I'm trying to walk across the dining room known as interstellar space. Much more difficult to balance 10,000 dishes. So when a star comes together, it has to have a critical mass, meaning you have to have a certain amount to be able to come together, to make this supernatural moment of coalescing, which is the beginning of life. That's what I'm trying to say, and I'm trying to speak about it in some sense of reverence and miraculousness, because life is a miracle. Consciousness is a miracle. Light is a miracle. All of these are the type of non-denominational abstract miracles that really should be, again, seen with reverence and respect. It is life itself, not merely an anthropomorphic God of one planet or God of one race or God of one species, or narrative structure. Again, I'm not down on your holy books. Just trying to say that's just a slice of the potential of what is this divine nature that is, it's just, the grandeur is so big, it is difficult for individuals to even perceive or conceive of it. But this miracle of life is really something that is happening at the genesis of stars. And it is also in the balancing of forces, that as there's that initial clustering together of all of these potentials that then become interrelated, and they become an organism, just like you do in your body. The molecules of, I always joke, tacos and ice cream, like what do pregnant ladies eat? The molecules of food potentials in the bloodstream of the mother or the parent begin to coalesce together and begin to become you. So you know that you're not a random happenstance of tacos and, you know, ice cream that came together in somebody's bloodstream, that you are according to a blueprint. So these galactic super waves are part of the cymatics blueprint, creating organizational features in the sky. So the sun and the stars, these are children, and they are also parents as they are in maturity and creating life and emitting realities. Hey, Lucy, good to see you. They are not random and not by happenstance. So I'm just trying to put another layer of understanding on top of science's viewpoint and definition of what is a star. Yes, it emits light. Yes, it is there as a critical mass must occur, and then it is a balance of forces to maintain what it is and what it's doing. And also it's so much more than that, and the so much more relates to us and our journey of consciousness and is deep, profound, positive stuff to recognize. And the sense of, you know, how we presently look at death, and death as a loss, and death as the word failure is coming to mind, but I wouldn't say that it's a failure, but like a disappointment, like my shoulders go down, like, oh, like it didn't go right, gutter ball, or it's not quite right. But if there were not stars that died, there would not be the capacity or potential for you and I and biological molecular life to be in existence. Because so what happens? I'm focusing so much on the beginning, I don't want to get to the end. The stars coalesce, out of a planetary nebula. They begin this wonderful activity that is a chemical chain reaction or cascade that is recognized, that begins the emitting of light. And you can also think of this as becoming a doorway of light, a portal through which light and consciousness flows. And that as long as that homeostasis is achieved, the balance of forces coming in and going out, and you're able to balance these complex dishes, trays full of dishes, then the star has a lifespan. And what the stars do is they emit time and timelines and probabilities and possibilities. And then there are eventualities where either the star might become imbalanced, and again, larger stars tend to have shorter lifespans because it's harder to stay balanced for that long. Smaller stars tend to have more longevity in terms of what they're able to do. At a certain point, either the star runs out of fuel, so there is no longer this balance of ideas and stuff and doing stuff and making stuff happen being sent outward, and then the crushing inner gravitational forces begin to become more prevalent and take over. That is one aspect of, what happens to begin this, the death process of a star. But the death process of a star is not the end of its life. Just as I'm trying to teach throughout this whole class, like, of course, we try to avoid the membrane of death, but death is not the end in the sense of an objective materialist that is kind of like, whatever, light switch off, like, consciousness simply, the phenomenon of consciousness simply stops, as opposed to saying consciousness was in a container, that container is no longer in existence. Consciousness continues on its journey, just as light continues on its journey. So when the death of a living creature happens, the suns are living creatures also, when the death of a sun star happens, it is not the end of the journey of that consciousness. So they have consciousness that is on galactic timescale levels of millions or billions of years, learn and experience and do a lot of stuff, and then they've done it. And then it might be time for that consciousness to change form, metamorphosize, and go into a new direction. And when that happens, you get a black hole. Now let's draw what a black hole is, because I do this all the time in class. I talk about the super stretchy fabric of time, space, and consciousness. Clear this all out. So here's like a sun star, and for the large part of its life, it is sending energy out, and the energy goes outward. These are arrows that go out endlessly to infinity. And that's also another supernatural miracle, that if you're ever can't sleep at night and you need something to think about, just think about that. The beginning of light that comes from this point or singularity point inside of a star, that if it is not acted upon on its journey, would simply continue traveling in a line endlessly in one direction. And the sun doesn't just do that with one photon, it does that with a lot of photons going all out into infinity. So what we perceive going into our eyes, and what makes it possible for us to develop a accurate, descriptive view of the world around us based on the information from stars, we're only getting a portion of the light that comes from stars. If you got 100% of the light that came from stars, your visual field would just look like 100% squiggles. This whole entire thing would be squiggled with sunlight. It would just be light everywhere. And that would not be confusing if you were at that level of ready to ingest that much light. But let's say, like, have you ever been at a party where there's too many people talking and you're like, I can't even hear because there's too many conversations? That's what it is like. It's like just saying that there are too many signals, and that your neurology is only built to be able to have the processing power to deal with like 1 or 2 or 10 signals at a time, not 12 million signals at a time. So all of being bombarded with all of the light, consciousness, awareness, and information from the sun star at one time might not be informative to you, because again, like, you can't even make sense of the words at a party when you just have a cacophony of too many things being said at once. So you need to level up in your processing power to be able to hear and see and know and interpret correctly all of those things that are coming to you at once. And it is a grand scale, I keep using that word, amazing complexity narrative. Let me just go back to my face while I'm talking for a minute here. It is a story. Like when we talk about the emission of time, timelines, possibilities, and probabilities. We're talking about story structures. And so that relates very much to you on an anthropomorphic level, your life. So I show you all of these paintings and drawings and sculptures. These are the abstract potentials for timelines and things that can happen, and the equation of you, like day 1 plus day 2 plus day 3 plus day 365 plus day 3,972 equals the story of your life. All right. But to you, you're like, Aurora, I am more than a mere number. I am more than a statistic. Like, yes, of course you are. You don't have to. I know that, but I'm happy that you advocate for yourself. Yes, you're more than a mere statistic or a mere set of variables. You are a biological miracle. And the things that happen to you qualitatively matter to you. It's not just 1 + 1 = 2. Sometimes it's yes, like got in my car. I always use this as the example. Successfully got in my car, drove to the store, you know, whatever, got milk for coffee, and then drove back home. You're like, yes, that is good quality of existence, as opposed to getting into your car, driving to the store for milk, and then getting smashed on the highway, run over by a Mack truck. And then that's like 1 + 1 = 5. The equation of your life did not add up. So very, very different to go into the sense of abstract variables and pure mathematical abstraction than to compare that to quality of existence. So when I talk about what is being emitted from the sun and the stars, it is perfect math. It is beautiful. It is divinely proportioned in every way that these harmonics are divinely proportioned. And it represents the complex story or narrative structure of events in reality, some of which include the tapestry of your own life. So in order for you to have a car, you're like, metal had to be created somewhere. And in order to like have coffee in your coffee cup, you're like, we're going to have photosynthesis, and we're going to have coffee beans, and we're going to have the molecular structure of water. Like for just these things that are considered to be basics or simplistic experiences in your quality of life, true supernatural miracles must not only occur, but must occur on a regular basis and be upheld. We're talking about upholding the fabric of reality. Supernatural miracles are happening all the time, upholding and stabilizing the fabric of reality. And a lot of that has to do with the sun and the stars as great thinkers, or a great thinker in the sky. Okay. So I got to the life cycle of a star and why this is personally significant to you as an experiencer in the human realm. Oh, I was going to draw a black hole for you. Sorry. Keeping myself on track. Drawing a black hole. So what is a black hole? Initially, we have, during the lifespan of a star, all of these lines of light that are heading outward. And then what happens when it is no longer heading outward is we get gravity. So these black lines going inward, that's the force of gravity, or the crushing nature of just matter itself. And what happens is you end up having, how can I draw it for you? I'm gonna draw it as if it's on a flat plane, but I want you to know and understand that it's in a sphere, but that spheres are harder for the mind to be able to know what's going on. So this is like the bending of the fabric of reality, right? And then so you're kind of like a heavy thing is on the surface of a stretchy sheet of fabric over here. When that star dies, the fabric of reality starts to get stretched way, 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 way down. And that's that stretchy nature of going to infinity over here. Basically, the sun backflips into itself. Going back to my face here. Have the sun that is during the large portion of its life emitting outward. When it doesn't emit outward anymore, all of that energy kind of comes inward, it backflips into itself, and it begins to dive inward, 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 inward. And let me grab the lasagna sculpture over here. If any of that reminds you of the outside and the inside coming together, they are very much related. So the journey inward is this infinite stretching of the fabric of time, space, and reality. And I showed you as if it is a flat plane with an infinitely heavy sun or bowling ball on it that then causes the stretchiness to come out like this. But I really want with your mind for you to imagine that you have a spherical stretchy ball of time-space fabric, and that the crushing stretchiness of gravity is going inward to the point of infinity inward, not that it's an endless downward, because I know that the visual nature of what I draw causes a big cognitive impact, but it's an endless stretching inward. And that endless stretching inward is totally analogous, a direct analogy to the singularity here. So you have points of direct stretchiness inward in all of the chakra points of your body. And at the end of the lifespan of the sun star, it will also backflip into itself, and its consciousness will go inward on its journey. So in the physical sense, what happens? What happens is the sun or the stars that are dying in that process no longer have the emitting experience. All of their energy collapses inward and is concentrated inward. And then sometimes what you have is a supernova, which is as all of these vectors come together, they kind of do crash, kaboom, then they kind of split apart, expand outward. I don't want to say explode because it's not like a gasoline type of explosion, combustion, which is what mostly we're used to in the physical world. And when I say explode, but profound forces, these profound forces like crush in, then they jump out, and that crushing in and jumping out and the frictions and extreme pressures that are created in that moment, that's what creates atoms and complex physical matter that is the raw material for life that we experience as biological and cellular life, things like calcium, all right, that is necessary for your body. So that is what you have in your body right now. Out of the death explosion, expansion of a star that is a personified, beautiful, living, loving being that had its life and its continuation and the end of its life, it gave a beautiful gift of molecular structure and the potential for life for us and birds and trees and animals. I need to drink a little something here. Thank you. Trish says inward to source. That is exactly right. As there was the expansion outward, then there's the inward motion, and it is a reconnection to source. So it takes away that sense of death as failure, but death as a return to source, as destination. And that out of that experience, there is a givingness that happens that gives the potential for not only that star consciousness to metamorphose into on its journey, but also for tiny fractal organisms like us as little fruit flies or turtles of consciousness to come into being based upon the molecules and atoms that are spread outward from those death supernovae and things that are happening. So all of this becomes actually like a very, very beautiful story, even though, of course, it would be distressing if it happened to you. And I talk about all sorts of, there are lots of different galactic civilizations where this has happened. Let me also briefly talk to, because I don't know if anyone's going to read my mind and ask this question. Aurora, what is a brown dwarf? Because this is actually super relevant to what we're experiencing in our stellar trajectory right now. Brown dwarf is what happens when you have one of these planetary nebulae that is trying to coalesce and trying to conceive, and it does not conceive. There is not a conception, there is not a life. So in order for something to begin emitting the music of life, to be bright, to emit light, all of these special circumstances, requirements must be fulfilled, and the circumstances are not fulfilled 100% of the time. Just like in human pregnancy or human conception, not every conception results in a baby or a viable pregnancy. So a dwarf star would be a star that didn't have enough of something to be able to be born as a fully awakened consciousness. And so some of them exist, and one of them has been actually interacting with our solar system for, I would say, about the past 5 years, maybe even going on the past 10 years, and is a large part of prophecies and all sorts of things that have been foretold in terms of astronomical giant mechanics happening, and also consciousness interdependencies the failed star, the dwarf star, it contains some potentials for consciousness, but it's not alive. And it has infrared heat and magnetism, but not, so it has some of electromagnetic phenomenon, but not the entirety of the spectrum, which is emitting light. So you don't see it in the sky with your physical eye, but it has been here affecting Earth's magnetosphere, which again is shaped like a chakra. So sometimes if you follow some of these satellite images that show a picture of Earth's magnetosphere, and usually what you've got is the sun is over here, solar wind is blowing Earth's magnetosphere is over here. And it kind of is like if you have a fan and your hair is long and it's blowing out behind you, that's what Earth's magnetosphere usually looks like. But sometimes it's like, here's Earth and here's the strings of magnetic force field lines that are blowing out behind. And then there's something that looks like a ball of yarn. It's like, what is that? That's not usually there. Like that big, weird jumble of stuff is not usually there. And there's a lot of hum-de-dum, like la la la, like we're not talking about that. We're not paying attention to that. But a lot of smart people and a lot of smart observers of these phenomenon are looking at it and being like, there's something that's going on there. So yes, there's been a magnetic and infrared object that has been affecting Earth's magnetosphere, our space weather, and the behavior of our sun. And on a spiritual / consciousness and psychological level, it's been somewhat of a battle, where it has been a battle for stability, as this magnetic object has been kind of like destabilizing our planet and our planet's trajectory, and even the sun's trajectory. There have been a lot of things causing wobbles and destabilizations, and also that infrared extrasolar body has created times of enormous heat stress on our planet. So we're trying to stay alive, and we have something that is literally emitting an extra amount of infrared heat radiation into our atmosphere, and is excessive heat and frying. And then there are also things that are diminishments of our sun's natural emissions that we should be getting. Not only light, like there should be more light, there should be light that is in a balanced spectrum that we're not all getting, and there should be consciousness in a full spectrum that we're not all getting. But I don't want your shoulders to go down. I don't want your spine to go into defeat. I don't want you to be like, roar, like it's not fair, and I feel angry and disappointed and not okay about it, even though I feel I'm in solidarity with you. This is a very confusing time when these two cosmic levels of grand scale beings interact together. All sorts of things happen, and you have to try to stay extremely focused and extremely have a lot of integrity. Literally, your own longevity and integrity of your own force field needs to be really strong in order to stay you and to stay alive. And for our planet also, we help to stabilize the planet as these things are going on that can be destabilizing effects. It could affect the whole entire biosphere, but things have actually gone incredibly well, because our minds, our cognitive abilities, spiritual abilities, how fast your chakras are going, how you are relating to time has an interaction with these larger bodies, the sun and the extrasolar body. They're all trying to affect time, is what I'm trying to say. Everybody's trying to affect time. The sun is very formal and follows the music of the great composer and of the great conductor. The sun is an excellent musician playing at the conservatory. Is like, I am classically trained. I know all the Mozart. I know all the Bach. My pinky never slips. I play every note as a right note. And the unsuccessful star that is not part of a successful conception, pregnancy, and coalition into light, it's like, no, I'm not a good musician. No, I'm not actually playing all the right notes. I'm kind of going around smashing the piano and doing all sorts of things that are not supposed to be going on. Causes death, causes a destabilization of things that are going on. And so what you have is, again, conflict between different narrative structures of reality. Whose story is going to be victorious and triumph? Whose story is going to be the experienced narrative structure of reality? And the real answer is the people that follow the beautiful music of the cosmos on any level are always going to be advantaged, because there's a reason why those notes are written in that way. There's a reason why that music is that way. There's a reason why these waveforms are this way. They have longevity and coherence. I will use my joke once per class. They're like good waffles. What do good waffles do? They stick together. The galactic super waves are coherent and stick together. The sun and the great symphony in the sky and all of the music that they make has coherence. It makes sense. It is a story structure that sticks together, and it has longevity. The story doesn't end. It has eternal presence. So that's the whole idea. And then these other extrasolar bodies, or non-successful, they did not pass the audition, they did not get into Juilliard, they are not playing every single note the way they're supposed to play. Those are disruptors that are going throughout the fabric and destabilizing things that are going on. So it takes a supreme force of willpower for yourself as an individual, all of us as a collective, working to stabilize the planet. And then, of course, our planet and many other planets in our solar system being like the strings of a guitar or of a harp that all fit together. And we are like a family that is reciprocally supportive and is part of, we're the children of the sun. This is so big. And when I say that word family, I can sense, because you guys know that I'm telepathic, because it's just about Thanksgiving, which is a big family holiday too for tomorrow. So wishing everybody a beautiful, peaceful holiday if you are in this country that celebrates Thanksgiving. That word family and family dynamics can be very fraught with emotional energy, where some people are kind of like this, oh, family, that's that word for people that I'm connected to, but that drive me crazy, or that I'm obliged to interact with, or, some other thing like that. Or maybe that they've, maybe there's trauma, maybe there's family trauma, maybe it's not just merely standoffishness or inconvenience or obligation, but maybe there's been like some very real trauma there. And that, so family can have one of these words with so much baggage attached to it, where they're like, oh, I don't know if I like being family to the rest of the planets in the solar system and or children of the sun. But I'm telling you, like on the galactic level where I'm coming from and the levels of idealism that I'm trying to impart to you, yes, it's a beautiful family structure. Yes. I know the solar system has had traumas. The asteroid belt that used to be a planet, the destruction that happened on Mars, whatever destroyed the magnetosphere of Venus, and also there's some disruption on Mercury, and the ongoing difficulties on our own planet, planet Earth. It's a family that has some problems, all right? Just we'll put it in that way. But it's very beautiful family. There can be a lot of planetary healing, and of course, that is what Flying Rainbow Lasagna is all about, this rectification events. Just brief shout out to Lasagna, that of all of these things that are going on, like with dark stars and magnetic principles, timelines, and all these things, the Flying Rainbow Lasagna is all about creating rectification dances and maneuvers. And these are things that you can do individually as a owner operator of your own genetic code, having your own stringed instrument that you're playing in reality to emit balance and harmony and be part of that beautiful larger symphony of life that you definitely can listen to the great conductor telling you, dance the lasagna, fix up this area over here, this area needs more tubas, this area needs more piccolos, like do it in a different and better way. Okay, so I'm looking at my notes and making sure that I'm not losing anything here. I'm doing pretty good so far. All right, death is a portal. I got that. Light is synonymous with consciousness. I got that. Everything we do is borrowed sunlight. I got that. But what I didn't emphasize enough is including the neurological impulses through your body. Like I emphasized your matter and atomic structure. Hold on. Because your physical metabolism and metabolic body and somatic cells are all made of sunlight and star stuff that has come from the stars. But let's also talk about your cognitive abilities, being able to perceive, being able to drink coffee or have light. I've got light from two light sources. I've got a fill light, which is an LED light in front of me here. Then I've also got the real sun outside, out the window. And then we could also talk about the sun simulator whenever it's up there too. I'm happy to address those concerns. But all this light coming into me is making me cognitively aware and is flowing through my neurology. And not only that, but if you kinetic tactile, I touch myself and I feel stuff, or something touches me, or I feel hot or cold, that's light. That's solar information. Any neurological signal that is coming through you, basically the phenomenon of electromagnetism is light and is directly related to the sun and the stars. Your neurology is connected to all of that. So great emphasis here. Your neurology is a microcosm of the much larger neurology that is the sun and the stars and the stellar network. I got this already. The sun as a ball of possibilities in the sky, emitting light. And the real miraculous nature of that light is that it would continue expanding or traveling away from the emitter endlessly if it doesn't meet or interact with something. So meeting and interacting with something can be, here's light, it bounces off of a mirror. It is not diminished, but it changes its vector. Here's light, it's going along, it bounces off of something that is not perfectly mirrored, but it might be like a prism, like a prismatic crystal. And then it is refracted, fans out, it's broken up into its various different colors. Also, this Roy G. Biv is not arbitrary. It is very intentional, and it is related to the color recipe of light that comes from our sun. And our sun is actually a yellow-greenish color of sun, but everything that we are calibrates to that light, that food being white. That's like the basic white nature of information, light, and truth. And in this case, that there be no consideration of like race or human description, anthropomorphic description of what white is, white being like a colorless state or a totality state of all color, that is the presence of all of these waveforms that complements waveform upon waveform upon waveform, that all adds up to this color that is no color, that is every color, that is infinity, that is pure consciousness, that we calibrate to that neutrality state from our star, but which is technically yellowish greenish, but we just say that is white light. And then everything that comes and fans out when it goes through a prismatic crystal is the rainbow, that these are all of the constituent elements that come from the star, and they represent layers of reality or layers of consciousness that are, or layers of food for the layers of awareness, or information and energy moving at different rates through time. That's one of the transformations, light being refracted, and then there's light being absorbed. So let me draw this out now, because now I'm going to do a little bit of criticism of New Age shadow work. I don't want you guys to think I'm endlessly critical, but I'm actually trying to give you good ways of being able to navigate the world. So let's draw a sun. And here's some light energy coming off of the sun or the star, comes over to here. And then let's draw an object. And this object is just like a simple sphere, or, you know, a bowling ball or something like that, a baseball, something like that. And when the light experiences and interacts with that object, it also creates an area of, I should have used a different color, because now this just might be confusing to you, but it creates an area where the light doesn't go. This is the shadow that is out behind the actual object. So this is also a pretty profound thing to think about, that if this object were not over here, the light would simply have traveled here. This is what would have been its pathway. Dum-de-dum-dum-do. Keep on going, keep on trucking, but it didn't do that. What happens is it went here and then it stopped. Maybe it got ingested by that object. Like when light comes in through your pupil and stimulates your retina, you're ingesting light. Or if light comes onto the surface of your skin and it is felt as infrared heat, it is ingested into you. And these are both profound experiences. When you're in partnership with the sun, that light is literally coming into you. But what it means is that light does not continue on its trajectory of potential, that there would have been light over here, which is information, which is awareness, which is sentience. There is now an area of no sentience. So now I'm going to create this little zone over here. This is the area of no sentience, the area of stuff that we don't know, the area of ignorance, and that is called the shadow. And when you do fine art, shadows are very important in terms of representational art because they make objects sit down. You know, wait, I'll go back to my face. You're trying to paint a painting and you paint an apple, but if you don't put the shadow underneath it, it looks like the apple is just kind of floating there on the canvas. So it's hugely important for us as visual perceivers of the physical world around us to note there are objects, and the objects are light. They're like emitting, like light is bouncing off of my face. You can see that my face is there. Then there's the shadow. There's the stuff, the place where light isn't, the place that defines or contrasts the existence of the light by the lack of light there. Now I have to speak to New Age shadow work because I recorded this lesson 10 years ago. A lot of things are different in these past 10 years. So I have already referenced, some people call it planet Nibiru or planet X, or there's all these different words for it. The extrasolar body is just the best, most neutral language. It's a magnetic and infrared body, but not illuminated body that emits light as our sun that nourishes and sustains us emits light. There's also the sun simulator, which is an artificial light source that is often in front of the sun or often brighter than the sun. Then there are also different lenses and arrays that, if this is the sun, might either partially cloak the sun or take its emissions and send them into different areas where they wouldn't have been, just like, you know, glasses on your eyes. Make light bend and go in different directions, that all of those things exist. And then there's also artificial light that is here in our own world, that is the 5G network, Bluetooth. You're like, wait a minute, Aurora, like I don't see that as light. I know it is not within the visible spectrum, but it is frequency, and it carries a information of consciousness or awareness. So instead of just being like, like this is me, I'm submerged in a sea of frequencies, this ocean of frequency, like I'm doing the backstroke. It feels so great. It's all divine frequencies, guys. I'm doing the backstroke in a giant ocean of divine frequencies. This is amazing. But then when you've got all these other frequencies that are not divine frequencies, then you're like, I'm trying to do the backstroke, but like, what's this crazy crap over here? I don't know what that is. And then you're over here, you're like, what's that stuff? So, because what does it feel like? Your mind should be in these beautiful, perfect undulative waves, coherent waves, on an endless journey. I'm on my endless journey in an ocean of waveforms. Feels amazing. But then there are some things that are not true thought forms. In an ocean of truth, there are some things that we are presently experiencing that are untruth, that they are either sometimes random frequencies, sometimes intentionally miscalibrated frequencies. Must recognize that some of these things that exist are not just antithesis. Some of them are intentionally randomized. So the idea of light versus shadow is thesis versus antithesis, the stuff you are and the stuff you are not. Here I am +2 and here I am -2, and that those things, even if you didn't know what this was, but if this was accurate, you could determine the shape of an object based upon the shape of its shadow. That is what shadow work is actually supposed to be. In a pristine system, you can examine your shadow and learn a whole lot about you as the object, as the existing item or the existing experiencer by the shadow or the areas of ignorance. You're like, wow, I'm really learning about myself. I'm making my silly SpongeBob face. Like my eyes are big and I'm like naive. I'm really learning a lot about myself by looking at my shadow. Like, yes, in a pristine system, you can do that. However, in our world, we don't just have a shadow or area of ignorance or things that you can just really learn about yourself from. We have a lot of false light, false projections, and false and erroneous impulses, some of which are intentionally false and erroneous, and they are there as illusions to not tempt, but to dissuade you from the truth, to distract you from the truth. And that's really what my experience has been for the past 10 years. And it's been intensifying. That my pineal gland, which your pineal gland absolutely is a light sensing organ, and it's a consciousness connecting organ. My tendril of attention reaches out. Usually I'm like, hooray, swimming through the ocean of consciousness. This feels so great. But my tendril of attention touches on stuff. It's like, wait, that doesn't make sense. 2 + 2 does not equal 5. That's not right. What is that doing there? And I've been getting a lot more of those signals, more and more, let's say within the past 10 years, and then more and more within the past 5 years, and then a whole lot within the past 2.5 years. So cautionary tales on doing New Age shadow work, that this is something that should be a self-reflective process where you're like, oh, I'm learning about myself, and I'm in the process of self-reflection, and I'm learning and growing as a person. Many people erroneously accept into themselves non-self signals as if they are self, because they say everything is God. I'm emitting my shadow. If something is bad or wrong or hurtful, it is therefore an emission of self. I have to learn to love it, hug it. Come on, let's hug it on up, kumbaya. And that in the kumbaya, in the coming together, I'm being facetious here, that then everything is resolved and everything is exactly the way it's supposed to be, and everything is great. SpongeBob face, everything is great, but everything is not great, because then what happens is, if there are erroneous signals of non-beings, like dead stars, that never got a chance to actually be alive because they didn't play the right music, they didn't get into Juilliard, and they are even maybe a little bit bitter, maybe I'm projecting, maybe I'm a fruit fly. I'm not, I swear I'm actually not, but I'm in a fruit fly's body. Maybe they are feeling a little bit angry and embittered that they are not respected in the cosmic symphony, and that their thought forms are fragmentary. The nicest way of saying is that they need healing. They are fragmented, emotionally distraught levels of consciousness that do need healing and resolution in order to then be able to be born positively and be a part of the symphony of life. That is the most accurate and neutral way that I can teach this to you. That those aspects of self are intentionally trying to distract you and feed you false information. And when you accept false information and identify with it as self, you do a great disservice to the cosmic symphony. So you are God, and you are God on the journey of remembering and recognizing the truth of yourself as God's self. I promise you that none of this is blasphemous, that what I speak is the truth from the highest level of cosmic truth, that it is not in conflict with any earthly holy writings, that you really are God, and that you are not apostate or worthy of punishment if you think these thoughts. You can and should think these thoughts and claim this ownership of identity, that you are God, one is God, or you are one with God. But not everything that's out there is God. Got it? We're in this incredibly complex, woven together tapestry of thought forms and possibilities and narrative structures. The people and the places, people and the organisms, like a sun, that are supposed to be emitting thought structures are the ones who are alive, who passed the audition. The sun passed the audition. It is a good thinker. It thinks thoughts that are of longevity and coherence. It stays alive, and it gives life to us and to many, many, many organisms. That is a musician that should be, or a voice that should be heard in the cosmic chorus. And that something that isn't alive or has never been able to successfully be born into life has not passed the audition. Its mind coherence is not adequate to create and sustain reality structures. So it should not be writing or playing music in the cosmic symphony. That is just totally neutral. Like any casting of aspersions or personifications or whatever, starchiness aside. That, because sometimes I don't know if you guys recognize this, like, as I'm saying these things, the dark star is like, like, you're really quite insulting to me, young lady. I'm like, I know you're feeling very insulted, and it's not necessarily a positive well-balanced personality that is going to really learn and grow from its mistakes or from its experiences. It is sometimes what would be considered failed personality characteristics. So there's longevity personality characteristics that are like this. I did a mistake, I'm going to learn and grow. And then there's non-longevity personality characteristics that are like this. I've never done any mistakes in my whole entire life. I reject the concept of being mistaken. I reject the concept of ever having to learn. I refuse to learn. I'm making mistakes on purpose. I'm going to keep on making mistakes on purpose. Bad musicians, bad math, doesn't add up. 2 + 2 does not equal 5, not taking responsibility for what they're doing. That's why they don't become a star. You got it? So the stars that you see in the sky, these are like the best musicians. They pass the audition and they're hyper responsible about what they create. They create our lives and the experience of our lives. And just think about the processing power that it takes to generate the events on a planet. It's enormous. Everything from 1 square foot of microbial activity in leaf litter, like a bunch of dead leaves decomposing, like the processing power required to be able to handle all of those microbes and fungi working together to decompose leaf matter is more than any supercomputers that a human has built right now to this point. It's enormous. And that's just in 12 by 12 inches in your garden. And think about the enormous grandeur of our planet, every single grain of sand that's on the shores of the ocean and the waveforms and the complexities of ocean currents. And that is just that level of the world. And then there's human dynamics and butterfly dynamics and earthworm dynamics of the animal world. Like, I hope that your mind is being blown by the complexity of the structure that you live within. It is extreme, and that this is all part of the levels of intelligence of the sun and the stars. That's how good they are as musicians. They are so good that they're able to balance all of those incredible complex levels of waveforms at the same time, and not tip anything over like a waiter or waitress trying to carry all of these plates. And so that's why they're good. Something I think that their spines should go up. They should stand in positive pride, not ego hubris, but positive pride. And they should say, yeah, I'm a star. I passed the audition. I know how to do all of this processing power, and I create, generate, and uphold life on that planet over there. That's really important. And that's really, really antithetical to this sense of a self-conflicting, illogical, semi type of planet or semi-star that kind of goes around just like a bull in a china shop, destabilizing things. That does not create and generate life. That is mostly a destructive force that doesn't have the capacity to generate. I think that's fair to make that assessment. So it is pernicious and corrosive when you do shadow work and you encompass signals that are erroneous signals and personality characteristics that are not the real you as if they are you. That's why I joke about kumbaya. Kumbaya, let's all hug the personality characteristics that totally aren't you, that totally aren't your shadow, that have nothing at all to do with you learning about yourself as you're here on your trajectory through life, but that if you incorporate them into your identity, they essentially live through you. Failed star personality characteristics that should not be in being. Going around bull in a china shop, making a lot of problems and fragments. You're like, oh, I have to love that fragment. Come here, fragment, let's hug it up. And then it's like, hooray, I came inside of you. You guys passed the audition. You know something? There is a level of personal responsibility that you need to claim ownership of and celebrate in positive pride, not hubris. The sense that you passed the audition in gestating in your parents' womb, your mama's womb, being able to, or coming forward in conception from both of your parents, being able to come into being able to sustain yourself for however many decades you've been here, being the owner, operator, sole proprietorship of your own DNA code in your own body. You have been doing something right for several decades. So all of you must congratulate yourself and claim ownership of that. And that I think that it is not healthy or appropriate to do the spiritual bypassing and just to be like, paint it all with a giant paintbrush. Everything is God, even the poopy craps that aren't really God. And I'm just going to say it's all God and hug it up and bring it all into me. Because when you do that, you encompass something when you're supposed to be filtering it out, that you're in a refinery of consciousness. say this in my class all the time. Refinery of consciousness, and what this is doing is refining you from being at a slant to being upright, or refining you from the general to the specific, going upward. Where's your upward trajectory, so that you are in alignment with this true core possibility of who you are as an ascended master. What do you do in order to make that refinement? You release and get rid of all the stuff that's not the real you. You redefine what you identify with and what are the truest characteristics of you, and you refine out everything that's not the real you. All the things that aren't the real you, personality characteristics, all the events that aren't the real you, because sometimes it's not whether you are a good or a bad person or anything like that. It's just those things were not supposed to happen to you, and they would not make you into the truest version of who you are. Just like, if you're born, you're not a bad person if the nurse drops you on your head and you die 1 minute after you're born. Like, that's not because you have a bad personality. You deserve to be in life, but those events do not add up to the eternal story of you. And if you encompass things, ideas, fragmented emotion, unhealed emotions on a galactic scale, even that are not the real you, as if they are you, just to be like, let's all be at peace and I'll do my shadow work and then we won't have to fight anymore. It does a great disservice, because you're actually supposed to be refining out those personality characteristics from yourself, just like in your body. So before everyone was hanging out with me before we started the recording here, I was eating my little coffee breakfast snack, and I'm refining out that energy right now. Some of my coffee breakfast snack that's in my tummy is becoming glucose, and it's becoming my kinetic energy, and I'm using it to flap my moving mouth parts and doing all this stuff with it. Some of it is not the real me. Some of it is going to pass through me and I'm going to release it, and it's not actually nourishing me. That is the same exact thing that's going on in our world. So that speaks to the idea of shadow work. So I had to say that because I recorded this lesson 10 years ago at this point, and I give a very idealized version of reality. Wait, I need to drink more water too. Hold on one sec while I grab my water. Or I'll show you. Wait, I'm like, wait, I don't want to be rude or whatever. I'm doing a marathon. Here's one of my beautiful structured water containers, because I love to show you what I've got over here. And then my beautiful crystalline glass. And I put my wonderful structured water droplets and minerals into there and all of that. Why do I share that with you? Because I want to inspire you in your own life to do something similar. Wait, let me put this over here. Because structured water absolutely helps to structure your cellular structure, and you can contain more light. Literally. Wait, where's my crystal? Light passes through crystals. They're structured. You can contain more light, be more translucent. More light will pass through you. As a crystal, you won't just be an opaque object. Rose has a question. Wait, I should just pause, answer this, and I should get to some of these other questions too before I roll by too fast. Rose asks the question of questions. So, and thank you for being here and asking this. Rose says, so who or what then created the poopy crap? This is the question of questions. Can God think a thought that is non-God, that is a non-divine thought, when the zeroth dimension expands outward to the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, 10th, 20 millionth dimension? Can it emit or expand anything that is non-God? And then this is also another question. It relates to the sense of, in your somatic cells of your body, here's your cell membrane, your outer cell membrane, here's your nuclear membrane. Inside of your nuclear membrane is the nucleus of DNA information, your either chromosome or chromatin, either a knitted genetic sweater or unfurled skein of genetic yarn. Is that the only DNA or blueprint structure that can ever be emitted from your cell? Or do you sometimes get a disease that might be a virus or an invader that hijacks the nucleus. And I know people have different senses. They're like, I don't believe in germ theory, or stop talking about this stuff. I respect you on your journey, but let's just use virus theory as an ongoing working model, the sense that there is a software program, quote unquote, that is a non-living or semi-corporeal entity that does not have its own body, that goes around jumping into bodies like yours. And it jumps into your cells and it goes up to the nucleus and it says, knock, knock, knock. Can I come on in? And you're like, sure, here, SpongeBob face. Sure, come on in. Come into my nucleus. And it comes in there and it says to the DNA, okay, everybody, DNA, shut down your factory, stop doing what you're doing. Here's a new blueprint. I don't want you to make what you're making anymore. Stop making those proteins. You put down that protein maker. Stop making proteins that you're supposed to make. Now I want you to make this new blueprint. That is me, the virus. I want you to make 10 million copies of me. And all of the workers are in there. They're like SpongeBob face. They're like, okay, here's a new blueprint. Dun, 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 dun. So their structure starts to make tons and tons of viruses. This is what I'm trying to say. Can God be God as creator, God as emitter, God as the creator of sentience and the thinker that thinks life into being? Can God think a non-God, non-divine thought that would then emit into being something that is not supposed to be there? And I think that the answer is yes, even though I know this is a deep philosophical and cosmological question, like basic structure of the cosmology, because there's a huge presumption to say, hey, everything that's there is God, everything that's here is divine. Therefore, I have to cognitively do backbends and contortions because I'm like, that's poopy crap. It's not me, it's not God, but I have to do something about it. So kumbaya, let's do something about it. I'm actually very strict in my boundaries. And I actually say, no, that is not God. That is not loving. It is not divine. It's not part of the original pamphlet. Like, I read the pamphlet. I know what existence is supposed to be like. And I know that that is not what existence is supposed to be like. And so I don't want to have to do intellectual backbends in order to contort and accept something that is not supposed to be acceptable. What I actually want to do is refine it out of existence. And that is the work of my life of being here as flying rainbow lasagna. What to do with the poopy crap? To say that poopy crap was not actually created by God as part of the original story structure of reality. It came into being in some mystifying way. We don't know where it came from or what its causality factor is, but somehow it is here and it is non-God. What do I do with stuff that is non-God? And I don't mean to be endlessly critical of Christian religion or theology, but I do not agree with, I take great issue with the sense of create a hell realm or a place of eternal suffering and send all the poopy crap to a place of eternal suffering. To me, that feels egocentric and anthropomorphic and a punishment for something that I think should be resolved. That when I look at these as pure impulses that are erroneous impulses in the cosmic fabric, instead of being like, you're going down erroneous impulses, like I'm gonna myrtleize you and you're gonna suffer. Because there's the sense of like, how you can inhibit bad behavior if you say that, like, don't be like the poopy impulses, they will suffer forever. I understand the moralism there, but in the basic abstract practicality and functionality, I don't actually want to have like, here's the big ball of suffering where everything goes that's not supposed to be in existence and it stays there suffering. Like, I actually don't want that. What I want is for all of the stuff that's not supposed to be in existence to non-exist. And that is what flying rainbow lasagna is. So I would say that in the initial genesis of God and the pure abstract creative force field, creating reality, that there was some stuff that was created or perhaps grandfathered in that was not originally created by God, and that is not something that should be accepted and encompassed in the personality structure of what is God. If God is defined as love and divine perfection and intelligence, meaning an organized system that is logical and non-self-conflictory and perfect, divine perfection, and that to see things that are not perfect and that do not appear to be part of that perfect overarching pattern of galactic waves and galactic cymatics, instead of having to say, well, maybe God did things wrong on purpose, or maybe God this, or maybe God that, I think I go to a very reductionist reductionist level where I say that's not God. Actually, that's not God. And then I feel that it is our experience right now in these bodies and in these positions as cognitive perceivers and reality co-creators and emitters to recognize that and then have a responsible, mature galactic response to it, which is to say, I'm here for a reason. I have my DNA, owner, operator, sole proprietorship for a reason. And I get to say within me, the stuff that is the real me, the stuff that is really of God, and the stuff that is not the real me, and the stuff that is really not divine, even to the point of redefining, is death part of the divine plan for us and all organisms? And so this goes deep to the idea of, do stars have to die? Do we have to die? And I think that the answer really is no. That is not a part of the original brochure of what it is to be embodied in physical matter. That in ancient Atlantis, we came into embodiment, did not die, but you did ascend, which is metamorphose, changing of shape. But that does not necessarily mean that you die in the sense of crash, you hit a dead end, and then have to go back to the beginning in order to make all this, have a game over, try again. That is not what the original blueprint was for our reality. So I'm recognizing that there is a distortion of the original blueprint. There are erroneous signals that are here that are not supposed to be here. All of this I take in stride instead of railing against it like, it's not fair. That stuff is not supposed to be there. Call the complaints department and write a complaint immediately, then put it in the complaints box to God and to the cosmos. Like, dear God, this is not supposed to be here, and I'm very, very upset that this is here. Instead, my response as a responsible galactic citizen is, let's do something about it. And in sovereignty, that means that you get to make choices about your own body and the things that directly affect your body and that you're connected to. And you also get to make choices and do things that are in protection of those that are vulnerable or cannot protect themselves. That is appropriate. I want you to know that. You don't ever have to stand by and be like, well, you know, if someone was stabbing me, I would be cosmologically responsible to stop the stabbing from happening. But if someone is stabbing a child, technically the knife's not going inside of me. I don't have to do something about it. I have to let it happen. No, you actually are encouraged as a mature, capacitated person who can perceive a wrongness or unfairness happening. And if you have the capacitation to do something about it, you should do something about it. You should because if the child or incapacitated person cannot help or protect themselves, yes, you should step in and protect them, because you are actually all connected on this bridge of light. You're all connected on the sea and an ocean of life. So Trish says, so the rest are all pooties. She says AI, and so pooties is pesky occupiers of the interstices, hat tip to Pedro. AI, artificial intelligence, imitating, manipulating, and mirroring. Yes, because the AI or these pseudo intelligences do not create, they don't have creatorship, they don't have life force energy, so they misappropriate. And that's basically what a lot of these organisms do, or they take the raw materials that are emitted from God's mind, from your mind, and then are like, yoink, I'll take those materials and I'll make poopy crap things out of them. But that's not what we really want. So wait, she goes on to say, infesting through our ancestral lineage DNA. So hijackers, pooties, the things that we don't want to be in existence, are actually infesting through our ancestral lineage DNA, and that this becomes the unhealed trauma we are here to now heal for all of us. LOL. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. That is totally accurate and totally truthful. So what's really going on is you're in a body, each one of us right now, that has a true pristine genetic code that I jokingly call your factory settings, the way you're supposed to be, the pamphlet, the brochure of reality. And then there's a bunch of hijackers and stuff that's not supposed to be there. Do you know one example of something that's not supposed to be there? Cancer, a major disease that so many people are having right now. That is not something that's part of God's plan. It's not something that's part of God's plan for you. It is not supposed to be in your DNA. It is actually not, according to the great music. My piano is not on, but I would go, dun, 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 the great music of life. It is anti-life. So it is up to you, sole proprietorship, to be like, you know something, that's not going to happen in here, that I run my business differently. we do business differently inside of this body. We do not allow that nonsense to happen. Or there are other things too that are these hijackers that are running through your true pristine ancestral DNA code, but that are not part of the true book or story of your life or of reality. Joanne asks, could there be disturbances? Could these disturbances be here to test our souls? I do think so. I think that, I know that's a little bit of, it sounds maybe a little bit religious. There's nothing wrong with that, with interpreting it through that filter. We are in a refinery. That means you refine out the stuff that you are from the stuff that you are not. You are also here for strength training, to become to be integrity, to be able, like the way that metal becomes very strong is by taking out impurities. The whole process of forging it in cauldrons and hammering it and all these different things, it takes out impurities and it changes the structure and it crystallizes it to make it really strong. That's what you're in the process of right now. Your soul is in the process of crystallization. Impurities are taken out so that you become stronger and stronger. So I would say that facing adversaries, like accusers, spiritual accusers, erroneous signals, lies about you or lies about the world, that those things are tests of your soul, like testing a metal to see if it's strong or if it's going to fracture, or if it's going to break, and can it be a link in a chain, because our souls are linked together and we all have to become incredibly strong and have this tensile strength to literally hold the fabric of time, space, and consciousness together into reality. So that is really what these difficulties and challenges are about. I think that that's, Joanne, I think a very positive way to interpret what we're experiencing in our individual lives, because it's not just random and it's not just persecutive or persecutory. It's not just to persecute you. It's not just like, how come everybody hates me? Everything is so down. How come I got these pooties in my DNA? How come why do bad things happen to good people? Like, these are very basic questions that people ask. No, God is not absent. God is very much present. These are not punishments that are being given to you for no reason. Yes, these experiences are meant to strengthen you. And also, big thing here, each one of us is here in service to the larger journey of consciousness, to uphold something larger. So every time you heal from impurities, stand strong, create greater senses of coherence and integrity in your own journey, you learn, you grow, your tensile strength is stronger, and also you are serving the larger time field. You are serving the fabric of reality that is meant to have all of these beautiful, complex, overlapping, interwoven structures, and you're making sure that threads go where they're supposed to go, and that threads don't break in the tapestry, and that events happen as they're supposed to happen. And that can be something like keeping your body healthy so that your genetic code does not express cancer. And it can also be something like protecting or feeding or nourishing another person or another organism in reality, where you're like, yeah, I kept that tree alive, or that dog alive. You kept another organism alive, or even, if you have a friend and prevented them from dying in some way, like if you gave them friendship and they, didn't kill themselves. These are profound things to do. You're here in service in your life to help to uphold the events that are supposed to happen and hold away, prevent from happening the events that are not supposed to happen. And that is it's a big responsibility. And also, I want to encourage each one of you, you're up to the challenge. You passed the audition, you're here, and you're here for a great purpose. Even though people joke about, like, I'm just driving my car, going to the store and buying coffee and putting it in my cup and driving along, doing my thing. You're not a nonsense person. You're not merely a deterministic chess piece on a giant chessboard. You're very important. The decisions and the activities that you make are important, and your own tensile strength really has an impact on the fabric of the rest of time space. So, it's a beautiful question, Joanne. Is this here to test our souls? My only, I want to just be very clear, because again, there's this sense in Christianity of whether you're good enough to get into heaven. Like, you have to pass tests, and if you pass a test as a soul, then you go to heaven, but if not, then you suffer eternally in hell. And I don't believe in that, and I want to really heal and clear that from each one of us, the sense that you are already worthy. Because I don't want you to think that you're here like down in the shitter, oh, pardon my French, that you're down here in troubled times because like somehow you've been cast away from God, or that you're not worthy of God's presence, or that you are being punished in some way. I never think that life is a punishment. It is a gift and also a responsibility, and that the good things that you do with your life and with your soul and with healing and taking out impurities from your own life and the social dynamics of everything you're connected to, you have a huge positive impact in the world. And it's not like, oh, like you're a prisoner and you're on a work program where you're like, okay, if I do this much work, then they'll let me out of prison, like, which is, I think, maybe a little bit of Christian theology, like you're bad and you're a sinner and you're down here in the poop factory, and only if you prove yourself to be a good enough person do you get to climb back up and be in heaven. And I don't think that's what's going on. I think that what actually happened was items not as described. Like when you send something back to some of these catalogs, they're like, what is the reason why you're sending back your purchase? Like arrived damaged, arrived broken, item not as described. I think for many, many people, that is what this life is like. You read the brochure, you're like, incarnation sounds great, I'm going to do it. Hooray, I'm a baby. And then you're like, wow, item not as described. I want to send it back to the catalog. But then, of course, you can't, because you're here and then responsible and responsive to your choices to be here, even though items were not as described in the catalog. So yes, our beautiful world and what we're supposed to be experiencing here in terms of longevity, coherence, and eternal life is very, very different in our experience of being here. And also, how do you get out of here? By refining yourself to the point of being able to exit through this wormhole and go into the next level of reality. So there is not a shortcut, and there is not a way to just be like, oh, like throw it all out the window. I refuse to participate. What I joke about that escapism, Calgon, take me away. Like something, get me out of here. You can't do that. So in many ways, there is like whatever, a test or a strengthening of your soul to be like, how do you respond to this unfairness and the things that are not supposed to be here? So a lot, because there's a cognitive dissonance of like, if God is good, how come all this stuff is going on that's not good? And then if God is all powerful, how can this stuff be happening? Why doesn't God do something? So I think that there's a very, very big sense of the story of taking personal responsibility, and that becomes a narrative structure of personal triumph in the face of unfairness, adversity, things that are seemingly out of your control, to rise to the occasion, recognize the unfairness and respond to it and do something about it anyway. And use something that's literally the information that I got from my own sun gazing with the sun a couple of days ago. Got up, I turned on my music, I was drinking my mineral water, staring at the sun, and I got the very, very true impression that was like a reassurance from something higher. Like, you didn't create all this bad stuff, but you are here to respond to it and help to fix it and make it better. So please, that is something that I'm passing along as a neurological impulse that came from the great thinker in the sky, and I'm sending it out to all of us here. You're not responsible for creation of all of this bad stuff, which is, again, a reductionist simplification that New Age shadow work tends to say, like, you know, if you got demons in your life, like, they're your own demons and you made it all happen. And I have had experience with a lot of those types of things, and I learned, like, not all of them come from me. Some of them might be coming from like a Wi-Fi cellular broadcasting tower, and some of it might not be my stuff at all. But you know what, when I find a mess in the middle of the floor, I'm like, that's not my mess, but I'm going to clean it up. I'm going to do something about it. So that is really how I approach this in my life. And I hope that that is a positive behavioralist approach. Like, what do you do in response to all of this stuff? If you see a mess, clean it up. If you see someone who's endangered, protect them. If you can do something that's within your scope of awareness and capacitation, do it. And that is literally how our world is healed and is improved. Chris McNutt, thank you for being here, says, we're like compost microbes with short lifespans, chewing through the poop and integrating the trauma, suffering, fragments, booties. That is very, very truthful. We are on that level of alchemical transmutation, taking something that might have been not a useful or usable material and transforming it into something that is useful and usable. Trauma, I would say, is not didactic and is not necessary. I would actually say that trauma prevents us from learning and achieving our spiritual greatness. That trauma is the thing that we must heal overcome or integrate or recognize in order to reach these levels of spiritual attainment and remembrance of God's self. The primary trauma of our planet was when something came in and invaded a very long or concurrent time ago and took us away from our divine connection. Up here, I have to bend down, up here, this thing that connects us to the divine, that was severed through genetic manipulation and frequency weapons a long time ago. And it's what's remembered in mythological and biblical terms as the fall. And it is something that everyone thinks like, what was I bad? Was I not good enough? Why am I not still connected to God? Or even maybe in amnesia, not even being able to remember that you are God. And that trauma that we experienced in separation from God has been the primary separator to basically to be able to get back to being God and remembering God's self. We must heal that initial trauma of what happened on our planet. So even though some people think that it's necessary to suffer in order to be able to like learn how to play the piano, I'm not that type of piano teacher. If I were your piano teacher, I'd be like this. Here's an A minor, and you play it wrong and your pinky goes in the wrong spot. I wouldn't be like, Donna, get a machete and chop off your hand because you played the wrong note. Then you will really learn. Like you would, if I did that, you would say, Aurora, like that is psychopathological. That is mind disease. Violence does not help us to learn. The real answer is that violence does not help us to learn, and that trauma or the residue of violence and violence to one's soul or spirit is an impediment to learning, although it does create like a big dent in your body, like, you know, the body shop, like you get a dent in the car, like, yeah, you had some trauma and you got a big dent there. You didn't learn from it, but it affected you a lot. So in the beautiful way Chris was talking about transmuting trauma, you go to the body shop and they take one of those plungers and they kind of pop the dent out of your car, buff it up, make it look good, put a new paint job on. You have to do that with your soul experience. You have to say, like, I didn't deserve that bad stuff to happen to me. It is something that happened. I need to reshape my energy field and go beyond that experience to be able to learn. That I don't see these as divinely created, necessary teaching, learning, didactic experiences in the school of life. I see them as like when a bully steals your books and breaks your pencils and is like, yeah, now try and do your homework. I stole your notebooks and I broke your pencils, you know, whatever, Poindexter, pushes it down on the playground. Like that doesn't actually help you learn at all. So what helps you to learn is emotional stability and having the basic resources that you need to be able to learn, and not these disruptions that happen from having to deal with what psychopathology. Pathology means disease and psycho means mind. There is mind disease in our world, and dealing with mind disease does not necessarily help us to learn. And it's also, I joke about this, these are not transferable life skills. Like when you work at a job, you want to earn the skills that you can then transfer to the next place. You're like, oh, like I learned word processing and now I can take my typing skills and go work somewhere else and I can type fast somewhere else. And that's like good. And you put it on your resume. You want to have a soul resume where you're like, yep, I went to Earth and I learned how to do this, this, and this. And then I can put that on my resume and I can go somewhere else and I can type 70 words per minute on a different planet. But coming here and learning about psychopathology is not necessarily a transferable life skill. You learned about the specifics of the poop on this planet. You're like, yep, I examined it. There was undigested corn and then also something else that we don't know what it was. But that is not information that really helps you to navigate the larger levels of galactic society, which function on a very different level and are based in pure love and do not have psychopathology. And this is also part of why I come from a place that is different and didn't come here with those life lessons, and that the things that I'm learning here in terms of navigating unhealthy, unhealed social dynamic structures, I'm like, oh, that's not what it's really supposed to be like. I mean, that's not according to the brochure, not right. A lot of things not right, a lot of math homework that's not done correctly around here. And that really, I've just learned, like, I used up a lot of red pens, making red X's being here, but that's not necessarily a transferable life skill. So please keep that in mind. Learn what you need to learn in order to navigate this world. Be refined on a soul level. Be responsible and responsive to the things that are here. But please know that that is not the definition of who and what you are as a soul. And that when you go and live in other levels and places of being, it won't be like this. And that's a big part of the healing of your trauma from this experience. It's not like this everywhere. You go to somebody else's family Thanksgiving and like no one is drunk or violent or, you know, assaulting you in any way. You're like, this is what Thanksgiving is supposed to be like. Yes, yes, everyone, this is what the Galactic family is supposed to be like. Not only non-violent and profoundly respectful of you, but loving and celebratory of you. I know I have a ton of notes to get through and I always send them out and make them in the PDF so that in case, because we're heading into the home stretch here. What is the stellar network really like? What is it like to be a light being completely on that level of speed of light, speed of love, and faster and above? And the answer is you are loved and celebrated. There is not psychopathology. There are not erroneous neurological signals. There is only truth. That is what it is for me to be Aurora on that network of the stars. I'm an impulse on the network of the stars. There is only truth and there is nothing that is erroneous and there is no error, even though I do go around with my collective fixing things where there's math homework that's not exactly correct. But you understand, like when you're in Juilliard, everybody can read music. No one is hitting each other with their violin strings or, you know, over the head like this. The tubas are hitting the piccolos. Nobody is doing that. And so the lessons that are coming out of a psychopathic and violent world are not transferable to a world that is actually truly civilized and truly based in love. And also when you are loved and celebrated, I don't know if you guys have even ever experienced this, like you're good and you're enough. That's why I take issue with any human religious structures that have as the basis of their teaching the concept that you're not good enough. Because I know you're good enough. I know you guys are all good enough. That should not be the basis. Like you're unworthy, bad, wrong things. Try to be better. That's not what this is about. Again, I'm not just trying to be mean to the limitations of human religion, but I want to bring you out of that religious trauma and into true connectivity with the celebration of who you are at the level of the sun and the stars. They're like, we emitted you. You're a light being. You're made of stars itself. And everything that is flowing through you is a neurological impulse that comes from the stars. You are good enough. You are exactly who and what you're supposed to be. And then keep going and keep getting better. Because that's the type of piano teacher I would be. Instead of getting the machete and chopping off your hand, I would be like, you had this finger, and this finger in the right spot. This one not right over here. Try it again and do better next time. That is exactly what I would do. And that is what life is like on the stellar network, where when we do Flying Rainbow Lasagna, and when you're creating and emitting with your mind, I don't want anyone to be like, oh no, what if I do the wrong thing and I say the wrong thing and I do the wrong thing and I mess up this whole giant cosmic symphony and then everything dies and everything. It's not like that. I'm not like that at all. Never be too afraid to pick up your instrument and play. Your body is your instrument. Never be too afraid to participate in the symphony for fear of making a mistake. First of all, it's recognized that you're new and you're still learning, but also please recognize that when you're a good person, you learn from your mistakes. The problem with the unhealed star, that is like the dark star, is that they just are not willing to learn from or admit to their mistakes. Like you could tell them, here's everything wrong on your math homework, do it better. And they'd be like, no, I don't think that I will. And it's like, that is an anti-life approach. Like if you learn what you're actually supposed to do and then you don't take that and put it into practice, that is against life. And again, it is not okay for one group of consciousnesses to be like, we don't want to do our math right and we want to mess it up for all of you. Conflict between different levels of reality, the good players that want to sustain the symphony of life and the ones who are intentionally playing wrong notes, smashing the piano, being violent with their violins instead of virtuous virtuosos. Inez says, for this theory speaks that kids have become ill. I'm not sure if I know the right word here. Something destabilized in childhood to build up immune systems. It is not there naturally when coming out of the womb. Might B, this is an important precondition for living in duality, material, spiritual balance. I understand your question, and I know we just have a little bit of language barrier. Thank you for being here and for what you said. So Ines is saying, like, when you are a child, initially you come out of the womb and you don't have an immune system, because when you're gestating as a baby, you don't need one. Your mother's immune system protects you completely. But when you come out, you meet all of these viruses and bacteria that your body has to begin to learn to recognize. That's not me, that's an invader. And this is basic energy boundaries, social boundaries, physical boundaries. And we do all of this. And we also learn what is self and what is not self. And I do think that we are here very, very perceptive for you to use that analogy, Ines. Thank you for being here and sharing that we are here in the experience of having stuff that is light and having stuff that is dark, and then having stuff that is simply nonsense. Like nonsense is not darkness, or these false illusions and erroneous signals. They're not merely ignorance, that they are like pathogens that must be recognized in your body. So when you come here as an infant, you don't yet have your microbiome in your intestinal tract, and you have to have that first milk from your mother that inoculates you with probiotics so that you can digest your food. Your body learns lactobacillus is my friend. I love lactobacillus. It helps me to digest my mama's milk. It belongs in my tummy. But then at a certain point, an amoeba might come inside of you, and your body learns, I do not love amoebas. Amoebas give me dysentery, and that it can kill me, and I need to get the amoebas out of me immediately. And the immune system gets the message. They're like, calling all immune system, calling all white cells, get the amoebas out, click over, they get organized, send out the call, and then everything goes into high gear, and your whole entire body says, get the amoebas out, or whatever it is. That is what we are doing as individuals and as a soul collective. That when I talk about planetary invasion, ongoing, ancient, concurrent, there are soul fragments that are here that are not supposed to be here. They're like the amoebas that don't add to you. Healthy microbes add to your longevity. Lactobacillus does its job, and it doesn't kill you, the host. There are consciousness fragments that don't do their job, and they do kill the host. Cancer is one of them, and many others that are like that. They serve themselves, enrich themselves, but they do not serve the totality, and they would kill the totality if you didn't do something about them. So what you have to do is be like, talking on your interdimensional radio, like, we got invaders, send out the immune system squad over, do it. And that is what we do. So internally, and then as a collective in society, that there are certain personality characteristics that you say, no, these are not acceptable and these are pathogenic, and I will not allow them to be a part of the world that we are experiencing. But then there are other personality characteristics that I embrace and celebrate. So lactobacillus does not have the same DNA as you. You're like, I recognize you're different than me, but you're supposed to be here. You're doing your job. Amoebas, you're different than me. You don't do your job. Get out. And then self state is, hey, you're me. Hug it up. Stick with me. I'm myself. You're with me. So those are like the basics of what we are doing here with soul fragment stuff. And Rose says, I literally feel levels and levels of shackles bursting while listening to this class. Rose, that makes me feel so happy, so gratified, so super enthusiastic, so excited. Truly, thank you for sharing that, and thank you for being here, and for your applying yourself, your attention, everything that you're thinking and doing and adding to the class. Thank you for that. Joanne says, yay, congratulations, Rose. And Trisha says, this theory may probably be there to justify the way kids are coming out of the womb with the cord cut too early, forbidding the full transfer and downloads, which takes around 48 hours, leaving immune systems compromised. I think that's a really good point to make, Trish. This speaks to our current level of like industrialized birth process, where they're kind of like get in the hospital, get out of the hospital. You're not supposed to take up so much time and energy. So this idea of like having a more home-centered birth where women can go through their processes they need to and not have the cord cut immediately and then the baby is whisked away. There's still more of that time where energy is transferred from the placenta and the nourishment and the stem cells, because when babies go through the womb, they actually are going through a huge trauma of coming into this world. Their bodies get squeezed and totally their brains get crushed and all this stuff. And then what happens when you're a baby and you come out, you're like, wow. And then your body is like, stem cells, we need stem cells. We're going to need to fix up a whole bunch of stuff because you just came into the world and there's like, this part is broken, this part is broken, this part needs help. So a lot of stem cells come from the placenta, and when they cut the cord immediately right away, the baby doesn't get all those stem cells. It just makes it harder for it to recover from the birth. So that's a very, very big part of it. Trish says yes, and in water maybe. Urine, yeah, to keep the stem cells. There are stem cells in urine, but I don't think that babies should be born in urine because I think that that would be an issue. Delivered in water, I think delivered in water is probably the nicest way to let these babies come on in. Let me scroll back while I'm doing question and answer here because there were some comments that were from back over here. Charlie B says all the way from back at 3 o'clock, in dancing the FRL and when we go through portals and on the other side, you tell us clear our disturbances. Are those disturbances like the shadows, which are not true thought forms? Beautiful, beautiful analogy. So diving through portals, when I do my flying rainbow lasagna dance, time is an aqueous solution that is around you, like when you're swimming through water and you dive through portals, right? Dive through portals, just like you dive into a pool of water. And then there's all of the waveforms that happen as the end result of your vector or trajectory through time. And I say when we're in class, I'm like, we're going through a portal, we're going through a portal. We go through the portal. And then I say to everyone, clear your perturbations like a waterfall that comes from the top of your head all the way down your body, all the way down to the bottoms of your feet and out through your toes. It is the clearing of the things that are unintentional. And I think that that's actually a really worthy analogy, the sense that God, the great thinker, the divine presence, the creator of everything, would create a vector. This is all the stuff that I want to create. And then here's all of the perturbations or the side dishes or the unintended consequences of that initial force and directive of creating. And that a lot of that is unintentional. So when I'm an artist, I'm like, here is the line that I'm intending to paint on my painting. And then sometimes my elbow smushes something that is not right and it makes a smush, and I'm like, this part I wanted, this part over here was the unintended smudge. So I get a razor blade or some little thing and I clean off the unintended smudge. I take responsibility for it. That is what clearing the perturbations are. When we dive through portals, there are disturbances that happen, and a lot of the time the shadow forms that are created are exactly like what's going on in water. If you have a perfectly still box of water, there are no shadows and light passes through it perfectly with no loss of signal. But if you jiggle that water and it makes all the waveforms, then it looks exactly like a pool, like, you know, the way that water reflects off of it. It makes that kind of interesting gradation effect on the bottom of a pool or inside of an indoor swimming area. That is interference patterns, light areas and shadow areas from the crazy overlapping randomized way that the water wavelets are going on top of each other. So the shadow forms from that level are the unintended consequences of the initial vectors of consciousness that are vectors of truth. And also, we must recognize that these putis and their use of technology creates anti-intelligence signals that are nonsense that make it difficult for us to learn. So even if it was just a natural signal and then the natural perturbations that come from that signal, you could actually reverse engineer what was the original signal based upon the array of the signals that came from it that were unintended, and now there are also just extras thrown in. So that's what's different about us. Like, we've got cell phone towers, Bluetooth, 5G, nanotechnology, all sorts of things that are frequencies that are in our world that are creating waveforms that are not just the erroneous signals on the periphery that came from the initial vector. So if I were to say there's +2 and then there's -2, and that this is the thesis and the antithesis, but then somehow there's also -2.5, and then there's also -20,000, and then there's also -3.70, and then I'm like, how do those fit in? Because those don't fit in. And I'm a very organized, orderly thinker. And sometimes I do go very harumph. I'm like, negative 3.70, like that's not even supposed to be here. And I am very upset. I'm calling the complaints department immediately. But instead, what I do is I dance the flying rainbow lasagna, where I'm like, going to dance that part out of existence. And that is my way of responding. Instead of just becoming angry or disappointed at the experience of being here, it is recognized that it is not a pristine system. And that might be disappointing, but in that recognition, there comes freedom to be able to say it is not pristine, and I can do something about it to make it pristine, or to bring it incrementally closer to the ideal that it is supposed to be. Joanne says, a fruit fly has been living with me. Consider him an ascendant fly. He's been alive for 2 weeks now. That's too funny. 2 weeks, that's like 2,000 years. That's definitely the most venerable fruit fly ever. And he's probably stroking a long beard and being like, children, let me tell you about the time that the garbage lid opened. Let me tell you about the time that the banana became black and we were able to suck its succulent juices, you know, like, or whatever, the time that the mold grew on the outside of the grapes over there. I knew the grapes before the mold grew on them. Yes, children, gather around. I'll tell you my venerable stories. Ines is so well outspoken to be able to differ and redefine our authentic core. As you said, always, no need to hug a demon. Thank you, Ines. Thank you for being here in class. Ines is a long-term student, and so I always joke about that. When I talk about all these things, I'm talking in ideals and come from a very idealized state of being, and I always say none of this means hug and kiss a demon. And I was saying that 10 years ago. So demon is a rather emotionally charged word and has a lot of religious connotations, an occupier of the interstice, but I think it's really important to say that those occupiers of the interstices who are persistent, stubborn stains who refuse to go away, they are intentional. They're doing their math homework badly, intentionally, and that the real acceptance of them is not to kumbaya. They're like, hug it up, we know you're a demon. They're intentionally keeping themselves in semi-states of existence by doing their math homework wrong and creating trauma. The love stance is to be like, I see that you are doing math homework badly and that you do not belong in the symphony. Like, I'm not going to give you information and energy, I'm going to take information and energy away from you. That's what the real love response is. So emotional love in the romantic sense is to hug someone, but cosmic love is to accept them for who they are. So when something is an erroneous signal and you accept them for who and what they are, you are loving them, even though it might not look like a very nice thing, like hugs and kumbaya. It might look like you're setting a very strong boundary and saying, you're not allowed to live inside of me. No, you're not allowed to live inside of me. Oh, hold on one moment. Let me just pause this recording for one moment. She goes on and she says, and these personality characteristics are defined as personality here, while our true personality is nothing but the expression of our soul, nothing but singing and dancing. Definitely, that's what it's like at the real level of the stars. So I want to talk a little bit about this, and I want to get to my notes too. But what is life really like on the stellar network? First of all time is now, and you're connected to all light everywhere, and there's no distinction and no difference between yourself and all light everywhere, even though you are individualized. You're like an ice cube in an ocean of consciousness. Like, there's you as the individual with your individual boundaries, but then there's all of the rest of the ocean around you, and there's no conflict in that. There is no conflict, and there's also no pathogenesis. Everyone there is a highly trained musician that is connected to God and is owning their own God self, and is basically saying, I know exactly who I am. I know exactly the notes I'm supposed to play. I play those notes without compromise, and I recognize that all of you are doing the same thing. There is no ego competition. There is no sense of like, I'm better than you. Are you better than me? I'm taller than you. Are you taller than me? There's no comparison between self and other. So there are piccolos and there are tubas, but they don't all sound the same, but they're all playing exactly what they need to play. So again, there's no judgment of saying like, well, you know, really, tuba, you know, you're really supposed to be sounding like a piccolo. There's the tuba's like, no, I know exactly who I am and exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. So there are unique personality characteristics. There is unique individuality, and there's a unique assignment for each person. And then there's the joyfulness of that expression. And that is what that great brain is like. And what we're really doing right now is we're like, you know, that movie Fantastic Voyage, where you get shrunk down, you're inside of a cell, and then there's like, you know, things happening inside of the cell. Like, we are from that level of the stars. and shrunk down into a physical body. I said we, I'm like, I'm not sure about if it's a universal journey, but I'm just speaking as if it is. I am shrunk down into one little tiny cell here. And I'm like, okay, like there's some stuff that's happening inside of these cells that is pathogenic, that's not supposed to be that way. And then it needs to be fixed up. And that the healing really does generate from the tiniest levels of self-state here, microcosmic levels, upward and outward to the grand levels of the sun and the stars. And, you know, I go up to the level of a galaxy, and a galaxy is like a galactic superwave like this. Galaxies aren't the end of the scale at all. Like the scale gets even bigger. All of the galaxies together make a big giant network, because I have to get to the notes, but I really want to respond to everyone. But every single one of these galaxies has at its center a supermassive black hole, and supermassive black holes are surmised to be something that happens when one or more black holes kind of gets together and amplifies, and they act as the glue, coherence, that helps as a gravitational hold to hold all of these stars together. So it is also an incredibly intelligent conductor. Tap, tap, tap. Every single one, every single star is, you know, one of these incredibly complex organisms that is creating its own symphony. And then tap, tap, tap to organize the larger collection of all of these stars into a galaxy, all of these bands getting together and creating a giant symphony. Huge intelligence. So science looks at gravity as just something that is just like, has a lot of stickiness or something like that to it. And it's more than that. It's really a sense of coherence and intelligence. Like, you're all going to stick together and you're all going to listen to me. And that's what the supermassive black hole at the center of our galaxy is. And I think that I've spoken about this. Let me say it again in this broadcast. The impulses that are intelligence that come from the supermassive black hole at the center of our galaxy don't travel in a linear directive across space and time. A line, a big, long line out to the edge of the galaxy. If they did, it could take 13 billion years for a thought impulse to get to us. And then it would be like, wah, wah, I just got the message and now the universe is ending. Like that would be too slow of communication. So what happens is time space is folded, the outer peripheries come closer, and those informations go directly to every single one of the stars. So the information from the galactic supermassive black hole, level of supreme intelligence there, goes directly out to all of these stars, which are portals of consciousness, and it goes in no time. And then our star might emit physical light that might take 8 minutes of measured existence in order to get to us, but that's only an 8-minute time lag, as opposed to 8 million years or however long it would have taken for that information to be able to get from the larger scale thinker to us on the periphery, because this is all about neurological signals coming from the impulse of the thinker and then moving back to the thinker. So if you're in your brain, you're like, I'm going to have a thought. I'm going to be like, pinky move. And then it takes time for the pinky to move. And then the pinky moves and it touches something. And it's like, I touched on something and I felt something. And then the impulse has to go up your arm and back to your mind. And you're able to perceive something is happening there. Same thing with light. Light is doing the same exact thing. Thought impulses, consciousness, and cognition is coming from the potentials that are expressed through the supermassive black holes at the center of every galaxy. Every galaxy has one, it's a giant network, and that intelligence signal comes outward through the stars and is expressed through light and photons, and it comes into us and it is expressed as nourishment, sustenance, and food, and also cognitive perception and ability and neurological signaling going through our individuated structures. And then guess what? We send it back. My pinky touches something and I send it all the way up my arm, all the way back to the brain. So you have life experiences and you either broadcast them in real time back to the sun and say, like, as you're drinking or eating or having your experience, like, this is what this feels like. And the sun is like, oh, that's what that feels like. And the rest of the stars are also broadcasting back to the supermassive black hole, and the supermassive black hole is like, oh, that's what's going on out there. And then you also, can rectify and change things, but sometimes it only happens not in real time, but upon your death. And that's when you hand in your hard drive. Let me grab my hard drive over here. Actually, I have several hard drives because I write so much music, they get filled up. So wait, here's a beautiful, fantastic hard drive. So let's say this represents the accumulated experiences of your entire, whatever, 100 years of life. You die, you hit the membrane of death, and you're like, okay, sun, star, God, creator, here's everything I experienced in my life. And the sun is like, yoink, I'll take that information. Okay, great. Like, this is really fascinating. I wish I had known about this a long time ago, because I would have changed and rectified what I was sending out, because you're in a rapport. You're in a rapport. Tap, tap, tap. Violins, louder. Flutes, softer. More tuba. We need more tuba. I'm joking, like cowbell. To be able to be in response with the musicians in the band, not merely hearing the recording as a playback. Because when you do that, then you're like, well, that part could have been better. That part could have been better. And every single one of these stars is really an amazing artist of reality. And as an artist, I am very self-critical in a positive way, not in a downer type of way, not in a disempowerment way, but in a way of really wanting to make everything I do the best it can possibly be. And when I look at something and I'm like, you know something, that part could have been painted better. That part could have been done better. And if it was like, well, if only I had seen that problem while it was relevant, I would have fixed it and changed it. The sun and the stars are exactly the same way. They're emitters of time, space, and consciousness. They're emitters of light and emitters and creators of reality. And they definitely want their music or their reality creating structures to be as beautiful, perfectly organized, and fantastically integrated as they possibly can be. And when you die, it's literally the symptom that something has gone awry, because death is actually not part of the music of life. Death is actually not part of the music of life. You're like, but you said that stars had to die for me to have calcium in my bones. I know in this level of reality, there is mortality, including the mortality of stars. But in the true level of reality that we actually come from, you do not have mortality and the stars do not have mortality. So you have to look at the implications of that. It means, yes, there is no causality factor for calcium to be in your bones, because there would not have been these star death throes, explosions for them to be able to create it in. So we are made out of different stuff in those places. So let me just make sure I get to all the questions, and let me make sure I get through all of my notes. Then I'm going to go sun gaze, because it's just about that time. Okay, wait. Okay, good. Oh, I got to everything. Good. Let me go through my notes. Okay, the great brain in the sky. The sun is a great brain in the sky, and it is connected neurocognitively to all these other great brains in the sky, which create the galaxy, which is the galactic supermassive brain that is held together by the supermassive black hole. That is just one thought structure in an enormous time space that is connected to all of these different galaxies. So the galactic center is a center of awareness for the entire organism of the galaxy. Each star is a cell in the great brain, or points of consciousness within a much larger organism whose lifespan is so long, it is difficult for humans to even conceive of its existence. You get it? Galactic scale lifespan versus fruit fly. And your life is within a very great being. That's what basically I'm trying to get across, the sense that you live your life as a human being, timescale small, within a much, much larger being. And that what is happening inside of your life is not arbitrary or meaningless, but is incredibly meaningful and important to the health and vitality and longevity and coherence of that larger being. And the larger being is absolutely rooting for you. It wants you to be alive, because you never look at your own cells and be like, die, die, die. You're like, no, alive, alive, alive. I love you, be alive. That's what's really going on. Everyone and everything is rooting for you and wanting you to be alive. The great thinker is sending out its thoughts through each star portal, each of which has its own unique character or personality. And read here, that means spectrum of visible light. So our star has a yellowish green flavor to it, but some stars have a bluish flavor to them, or a reddish flavor. And the sun star is a forge, like a metallic forge, within which all of the elements that your body is made come from, the atomic forge. And that's at the inception of matter in the universe, or in the cosmos. So again, this speaks to a different cosmology when you're in a world with no death. How can there be atomic stuff if the forge is made out of the death of stars? How can stuff happen and be made if it is not forged in death? And that is how stuff is made in a different level of reality, which is we'll have a different class in a different level of reality, where I just explain and describe that. You are an emanation or offspring of the sun. This is big. I want to read this to you. You are a child of the sun. The sun is your parent. Literally, the sun is our parent. It is our mother, father. It is an object of veneration. Sun worship is not something that is to be derided from early, simple, paganistic people. It is something to be recognized and celebrated as a sophisticated recognition of that which gives us life. You're an emanation or an offspring of the sun. You are a child of the sun, and the sun is your parent. You are made of the consciousness of the sun. Your neural impulses are made of sunlight, and the sun knows what you are thinking and experiencing. Big. The sun knows what you are thinking and experiencing. And okay, the central black hole, the central black hole of the galaxy, the core, is the center of intelligence that holds everything together, and that is not only the significance in terms of your origins of consciousness, but also your destination. There's actually a lot of Mayan traditions about Xibalba and the dark spot in the cleft in the Milky Way, which is actually like the center of the Milky Way, the relationship of Earth to sun stars, the artificial barrier, energetic and mental, between matter, flesh, and its origins is now being dismantled. Embodied humans can now more easily connect to all of the little sparks of consciousness in other time places. Flying rainbow lasagna, flying rainbow lasagna. Speaking to otherworldly consciousnesses instantaneously. Again, this is from the folding of time-space fabric, so that you do not just have linear impulses that travel across vast distances but take a long time, but instead you have this folding of time, space, and consciousness that allows you to be able to speak to other aspects of yourself instantaneously. This is how experts do star travel. This is what true telepathy is. This is what galactic citizenship is. This is everything that humans are here cultivating ourselves to in order to reascend and get to these levels of galactic citizenship, to be able to have good, positive, nourishing conversations or jam sessions musically with these other levels of consciousness. So again, please don't feel discarded or abandoned by higher dimensional beings. They're not like, oh, you lowly human, not good enough to be in our club, like poop off. They're not like that at all. They're more like, guys, like, we want to talk to you so much, and you've got all these problems and it's so difficult to talk to you. Like, they're literally right there in the sky at night when you sit underneath them stars and look up from your lawn chair or whatever. Like, you're talking to a bunch of incredibly ascended, beautiful beings. They're like, we have so much to say to you. Like, we got to get through techno smog that's on your planet, genetic modifications that are inside of you, and the linguistic talking structure that's been implanted in your mind. But it's not that easy to get through, but it is inevitable. And they're right there. And when they get through to you, this is the real message that you're going to get. We're so happy to talk to you. We love you so much. We are your star family. We haven't abandoned you. We've been here the whole time. We've been trying to get through to you. That's it. Please know that. That is, again, something that I have received as my information message to me, that I'm then neurologically sending it along to you as other neurons. I'm like, yeah, no, you're not abandoned at all. They're trying like anything. They're trying to call you on the phone. They're trying to talk to you telepathically. Very, very challenging to get through. You have the galactic sun inside of you. First, I'm going to say this. You can connect to the sun in no time. You have the sun inside of you. You have the galactic sun inside of you, and you have the singularity inside of you. The folding of time, space, and consciousness. There is no distance between yourself and the sun, and there is no distance between yourself and the galactic center, and there is no distance between yourself and singularity. That is what flying rainbow lasagna is really all about. All singularity structures are doorways of consciousness that lead to the sun, the stars, and the central core of consciousness in the epicenter of the galaxy. Talked a lot about the sun emanating time, timelines, and possibilities. And all of the timelines in the time vortex are emanations from the sun. It is your light body, a thought that is being explored within the neurology, within this enormous larger organism. So your whole entire life, from birth to through multiple levels of being and sometimes dying, and then to the ascension moment when you're like, I am God, that is one thought that is being explored within the larger brain known as the sun, which is connected to all these stars. Your life is a cognitive impulse within a much, much larger brain. So the timelines of your life and your life experiences are consciousnesses that are being explored by this larger organism. Consciousness coming to know itself, the great story of the universe. And then that's only part one, guys, and it's already been 2.5 hours. But consciousness discovering itself is part two. And basically I talk about the journey of light as being an infinite journey unless it interacts with an object. The sun as being a large ball of possibilities in the sky. I actually got through a lot of all of this, and I talked about the shadow realm and made distinctions about shadow work. The world of matter and the third dimension is a world of matter slowed down on its journey. It is a world, matter is light slowed down on its journey. So right now we're infinitely aware of matter, like my cup is made of matter, my dress is made of matter. All of this is light that is going slower than the speed of light. And I talked about the shadow behind each physical object is the place where light is not. This place of no light is very different than the reality of all light. I come from a reality that is the light of all light, that is the stellar network, but you'd be like, Aurora, how can you even make sense of things there if there's no contrast? There are different qualities to light. So just very briefly, light can be fast, slow, hard, soft, texturized, various different colors, and have so many different qualities that it is very possible to be able to make distinctions within and navigate within a field of pure light without requiring darkness or no signal, and definitely not requiring nonsense, which would be considered non-signal, non-intelligent signal. Light which is condensed or squashed together in one place, so it does not extend or stretch out into the areas of existence it would have if not coalesced into matter. So that's another way to think of matter. Matter as here's light completely stretched out on its journey. But let's say I'm going to smush together some of this light this much, and I'm going to make it matter over here. So there's this whole implied trajectory where light is not, but the rest of the movement of that light has been squished together. Talked about contrast, light versus dark, and the shadow. I need to talk with you more about photosynthesis because it really is a miracle, a supernatural occurrence that is happening all the time that has everything to do with the bending and folding of time, space, and consciousness. It's not for this moment now, but that's part of the Path of Light curriculum that I'm developing to be able to teach you about that photosynthesis and how the light actually makes molecular structures change, and that equates to a different convolution of the surface of time, space, and consciousness. So we're getting to that, and I'll be able to share that with you very soon. You are a solidified light vessel, eating solidified light, and you are a refinery of light, taking physical matter and refining it through your digestion up through the layers of your being until it becomes a neural impulse, which translates the experience of physical matter in the physical realm, which is an analog experience, into a digital for lack of a better word, or purely abstract might be better, non-physical experience that can be broadcast or sent as pure energy returning to the sun. So impulses that go from your tongue about what something is tasting like to your brain, that's an analog signal. You're like, this tomato to avocado sandwich tastes so good. That's what it tastes like. But it's still an analog signal, like an old-fashioned needle with a record, making the needle vibrate and jiggle. In order to translate it and transfer it to the sun, you need to translate it into a purely abstract or quote unquote digital, like numerical based signal that can then be broadcast and sent outward to the sun. So that's really what the actions of your light body and your non-physical body of refinement are all about. So your mind and your experience and your light body emit light. So your mind emits light in the form of EEGs, like the electroencephalograms that can tell that there's something coming off of you. It's kind of like a weak magnetic field, but you also do emit a light that is not a light that you see with your physical eyes, but with your visual spectrum. It is beyond the visible spectrum. And you also do emit infrared, like your brain is hot and you emit infrared, and you emit infrared from your body. And there are also more subtle waves of consciousness in the Roy-T-Biv spectrum that are what you're emitting in terms of timelines. The sun is a great timeline emitter, and God is a great timeline emitter, and you are a timeline emitter also. So I know I'm just moving fast to try to get all this out, and then I'll be done. You're a co-creator. So you're not here as a strictly deterministic chess piece on a larger chessboard. You are also not creating as a completely solipsistic epicenter with nothing in a contextless void with nothing around you. No, you're somewhere in between both of those things, where God is a creator, the sun and the stars are creators and emitters, and then you are also in a partnership with this vibrating field of pure potential, creating the seeds with your own mind and emanating those thought structures into reality. So you are emitted, you are part of a sea of emanations that are emitted, and then you also are an emitter, even while you are swimming around within and navigating that sea or ocean of waveforms. Very, very complex and non-reductionist to recognize all of that. You broadcast back the food you eat to the sun in meditation and mindfulness, and focused being anything that makes you be focused completely on the now. That's actually very, very powerful, because that is when you exist in an unperturbed flow of time. You're not clinging to the past or reaching for the future. You are stuck in the now positively. Lucy has to hop off. Thank you for being here, Lucy. All of your experience is based upon borrowing light from the sun. I say borrowing because it all ends up going back to the sun. You have your body and you have your cognitive abilities and you have neurological impulses and you have many, many items and energy impulses that are you for the moment. And they're all on loan to you from the sun and the stars, and they will all return to the sun and the stars. This timeline, these consciousnesses, this energy, and the electrochemical energy that animates your neurology and your awareness is all on loan to you and will eventually return to the sun. That's big. The sun has its own journey of consciousness. It is being a star for a certain amount of time until its consciousness either implodes or does a backflip into itself. From every direction, it becomes a black hole, and this becomes another doorway to infinity. No longer thinking of this as death or the end of consciousness, but as a doorway into infinity. So this journey or trajectory that the sun is on as an incredibly large artistic thinker in the sky is then going into its own resolution, which is not the end, but is just the beginning of the next chapter of the story of consciousness. Consciousness, the story never ends. A central ray of consciousness being split into its diverse elements in the same way that a beam of visible light is refracted by a prismatic structure. I say so you don't think I'm talking about a prismatic structure. Dramas being played out on an epic grand scale between the living being in the sky. And yeah, so this is so looking at the night sky, understand all the stars are points of consciousness. They've all got their things that are happening and that they're emitting and that they're making happen. Astrology as the human viewpoint, mythology of the sky, beings who inhabit the sky, with the very real literalism that dramas are being played out by all of these giant scale beings that are known as star beings. They are in dramatic interactivity with one another, but not necessarily pathogenic conflict, but dramatic interactivity in the story structures and narrative creations that they are emitting and sending out to one another. The stars are all thinking with one another and dramatically interacting, and that affects your individual life. Driving around here, drinking coffee. Each star has its own personhood, its own viewpoint, and exists as an emanation or a lesser ray of a much larger consciousness. Got it? So we are all these beautiful individuated creatures or organisms, and we're facets of a larger multifaceted totality. So too is one star a facet of a much larger multifaceted, multidimensional totality structure that is light itself. You are in the process of refining your true self out of the potentialities of the world, making a distinction between you and not you. Lesser peripheral selves are not you, and they are distortions of you. And the core awareness of who you are would be the ascended personality of the entire galaxy, ascended mastery on a grand scale. So you are learning to be the ascended master of who you are. The sun is learning to be the ascended master of who she is. And the galaxy is becoming the ascended conglomeration of personality aspects of each one of these ascended star beings. So I talked about the levels of mortality where even a star can die. And also there's the level of inevitability. Every star has an ascension pathway. That's really important, that I'm happy that I emphasized, that they don't all just have inevitable mortality ending in black holes, which are infinity points. They all also have at least one path of least likelihood. Not, I would say at least, by definition, they all have one path of least likelihood, which is their eternity pathway, which is the line that brings them as their most perfect form as their most perfect story of self into alignment with the totality structure that is the entire galaxy. And the entire galaxy has a personality structure of all these individual refined characteristics of each one of the stars that becomes the refined ascended galaxy. And being on those levels means nobody dies. So every single one of us that ascends adds up to and is in conjunction with every single one of the stars and the versions of them, their selves that ascends, and that all adds up to the perfect colors of the paint box and the perfect music of the harmony of the galaxy that ascends, and the many multiple uncountable numbers of galaxies that all ascends. And that is the world where there is no death. And that's actually the world the way it's supposed to be. That's actually the world that we all came from. And that is what all of our efforts in this journey are about arriving at or returning to. Okay, so oh my goodness, I'm almost there. I'm talking about this as the earthly quarantine is lifted, or as your sequestration ends, the comprehension expands, because you're beginning to talk with yourselves and versions of self that are on other timelines and coming from different star systems. There's no longer a distinction between where does consciousness originate from, your planetary structure or your place in time. Does it come from Sol of the solar system or a different star system? Because there's all these questions here about Arcturian, Pleiadian, starseed. I know that these are like part of people's processing of this information and who they are and where they're coming from. But when you really get to these higher levels of comprehension and perception, you recognize that those are nonsensical questions. The question of whether light comes from our nearest star or from another star, or whether you came from that star and then traveled here and where you're going next, or where you are on your journey. You begin to redefine time and redefine origins of self. This is part of becoming a galactic citizen, because all of these points of consciousness, the stars, are all connected together as the neurology of a much larger being. So then it's kind of like this. Do you come from the great brain? Yes. Do you come from the great brain? Yes. Are you a thought impulse in the great brain? Yes. Are you getting exasperated by my asking? Yes. Yes. So you recognize that you're different flavors, but all cognitive, neurological impulses as part of the great brain. You are one individuated cell in the planetary body of Earth or Gaia, and you are also a tiny point of consciousness that is an emanation of the sun, the solar consciousness, which is a tiny point of emanation from the galactic consciousness. And your personal struggles, this is big, let me drink. Your personal struggles to be free mentally and to be a master in control of your own mind and consciousness are connected to the stars, which are also in the journey towards freedom. Got it? This conflict that is happening here on this planet with 5G, nano wetware, I don't even want to say the word, lollipops that go subcutaneously into people's bodies, all of that, and your struggle to be free mentally and to be coherent in your own mind with no thought invaders is absolutely analogous to the struggles of the stars. Because if you look at the Milky Way galaxy, there's the whole area that is part of the Orion arm of the star system that is in disarrangement. Something has happened there, just like something happened in the asteroid belt of our planet, of our solar system. There's some trauma that must be transcended in our galaxy. And we're not the only galaxy that has had this problem. So please comprehend that your own individual struggles for freedom and for cognitive coherence connect deeply to the struggles and the journey of the star, the entire star system, the galaxy, consciousness everywhere across multiple timelines and parallel realities. It's big stuff. Observations of the sun's emanations, coronal holes, all the space weather stuff, and changing magnetic poles, that interacts with the quality of existence on Earth. It absolutely does. And I'll get more into that in future sharings here about magnetic field lines and how they cross, interpenetrate each other and create portals. And and it seems obvious because the sun is the creator and emanator of all that we are, will be creating and affecting life events and awareness in the journey on Earth. And of course, the thing that has been the dark star that has been inhibiting Earth's magnetic field and interactivity with the sun has also been a big part of this journey and story that I just didn't put into the recording from 10 years ago. So not only on Earth, but our whole solar system, there's been changes in the space weather on Jupiter, cloud structure known as the eye of Jupiter, and the different bands or formations of storms, changes in Venus, changes in Saturn, the hexagonal structures of the poles, which have changed structure and color. And all of this has to do with the mass consciousness raising of our entire neighborhood, meaning our entire solar system, being transformed as we get greater and more direct connectivity to the consciousness at the center of our galaxy. So I'm happy I made it through all of my notes, and it only took me 3 hours. And basically what we're talking about is the healing of our entire galaxy. So you're healing your body, you're healing your social dynamics here on Earth, you're healing your own ancestral traumas, you're healing from the trauma of what is known as the fall of consciousness and everything that's happened here on this planet. That is a massive amount of healing, and it happens within the larger context of the stars and the stellar network healing and the galaxy healing. I tell you all the time, where I come from, on the stellar network, everything is not perfect, even though I know there's like the brochure and how it's supposed to be here and how it is there, and those things. What it motivated me to come here through Flying Rainbow Lasagna, through this genetic portal, and be here and be able to share these ideas and change the trajectory of you guys as a graduating class, is because if I didn't, it percolates upward. Everything would not be okay up there. So I want you to know that there are things that need to be healed on the stellar and galactic level, and that my journey here as a walk-in is part of that healing. There are many people that are on mission that are doing that here, and that the work that you do in rectifying your own body, cellular structure, trajectory through time, and DNA dance percolates upward and radiates outward very profoundly to everything that needs to be healed in our galaxy. And that all of this ends up leading to expansive, explosive, orgasmic freedom states that makes it all worthwhile. So please, I will just, and end with that particular encouragement. Please keep going, even through great adversity and under great duress, because this really does bring you to freedom, and freedom is a totality state. And there's not a way for you to have one little planet has problems over here, but everything is great everywhere else. No, you can't be doing the backstroke in an ocean of consciousness and eating a cosmic strawberry and everything is fantastic and perfect, but just one problem on one little planet. You really have to fix everything up. And that is what this journey and mission is really all about for each one of us, fixing everything up. So that is what I'm going to end on, but I want to make sure that anybody who has anything to say, like Ines says, question over here. So any more questions or comments, please, in the chat now. It says, has each human a specific star that somehow belongs or interacts with this being? You know what I would really say, when you get to these levels of pure light and identification with pure light, you just identify with light. You're not like, that's my photon, like that's my photon. All light everywhere is connected, although it has different qualities as it is on its journey. So it's not all interchangeable, but the identification with, like, like when you have a thing and you're like, this is my thing and I use my thing and it's my thing, or with one particular star, like I really am getting to these levels and remembering and retaining my remembrance of these levels of all light everywhere and all events involving light everywhere as being identified as self. So I think that the answer is that only that level of specialness is really only in a linear journey. When you're in the nonlinear sense of perceiving all totality as now, you really feel a deep, profound love and connection for every single one of not only the stars that are in existence, but every single photon of light and every single true thought and true organism. So like right now, I really love my dog. And I love her a lot. She's like number one in my life and number one in my heart from the linear perspective. But when I get up to those levels of galactic consciousness, I love literally every organism in every point of consciousness with that same level of intensity that I love my dog. And that is what unity consciousness is. Joanne says, thanks for another great class. Rose says, stellar class. Thank you. You are very welcome. Thank you for being with me, guys. I know it's a lot of focus and mental effort. My recognition goes to you. My hat is off to you. Thank you for being such wonderful participants. Thank you for all of your questions and comments. And I want you to know, like, I really do feel you both in the live and in the live recording session, and then afterwards, people that are watching this afterwards. I feel you, and I really appreciate and love you profoundly for connecting with me on these levels. Thank you for thinking these thoughts that are alive being, that come into you, and that you are a part of this. You're a part of this stellar neural network by being here and thinking about this. So I truly thank you, and I'm profoundly gratified. Thank you very much. Ines is great. Oh, thank you. She's great, Professor Aurora. So deeply moving and inspiring. Thank you very much. And Trisha also says, thank you, Professor. You guys, I love it. I love it when you call me Professor, truly. Okay. Many blessings to you. Happy Thanksgiving if you guys are going to have a Thanksgiving. Thank you very much, everyone.